Chapter 3048. Elder Yu's expression changed slightly when he heard this, and he said in a deep voice, "My lord, don't be rash." "I don't need you to remind me, I know. After all, we are different from those two brats surnamed Qin. We are from the Rogue Cultivator Alliance. If we kill Su Hua, the Demon Palace will definitely use this as an excuse to make a fuss." Zhuo Tiansheng waved his hand. "It's good that my lord understands. Actually, my lord, you don't have to worry. Even if Su Hua knows that we did it, he won't dare to find trouble with us. Moreover, he also provoked that brat surnamed Mo. That brat is a madman and will definitely not let it go. We just have to wait and watch the show." Elder Yu smiled slightly. "That's true." Zhuo Tianqing nodded with a smile and said, "Although we haven't found out their origins, we can basically confirm that they have nothing to do with the Demon Palace." Elder Yu nodded. "Okay, I will immediately report this matter to the city lord. Help me keep an eye on Xian. This girl has been absent-minded for the past 2 days since she came back. I'm really worried." Zhuo Tianqing sighed. Elder Yu smiled and said, "She's grown up and has someone she likes. She will definitely be like this." "You're still smiling? This matter must not be taken lightly. Although they have nothing to do with the Demon Palace, their origins are unknown. What if they have ulterior motives? So this matter must be treated seriously." Zhuo Tianqing said. Elder Yu said, "Then if Xian insists, what can you do?" Hearing this, Zhuo Tianqing couldn't help but smile bitterly. There are so many young talents in the Eastern continent. Why did Xian take a fancy to that little madman? Suddenly, Zhuo Tianqing seemed to have thought of something and asked, "What about Yun Ziang?" "This old man has also investigated, but there are no clues at all. I heard that he first appeared in the Tianyue building. As for the owner of the Tianyue building, it is said that she appeared in Tianfeng City 100 years ago. She plays the zither well and knows how to brew wine. Many young talents in Tianfeng City admire her. As for her name, it seems that no one knows. After all, she is a prostitute, and this old man didn't investigate it in detail." Elder Yu said, "This woman is not important. The main thing is Yun Ziang. This person is not simple. I'll make a trip to Ocean of Cloud City and have a chat with the city governor. I'll ask him to pay more attention to this fellow. All right, I'll go look for the city lord." With that, Zhuo Tianqing stood up and left. At the same time, in Zhui Xiaoxian's residence, a cool breeze blew past and the lake rippled. The attic looked very quiet under the moonlight. Outside, 2 guards were protecting Zhui Xiaoxian. Both of them were quite powerful. They were at the peak undead realm. His sharp eyes constantly scanned the surroundings. On the windowsill on the 2nd floor, Zhuo Xiaoxian was wearing a gauzy long dress, looking like a peerless fairy. She sat quietly on the windowsill, gazing at the lake. From time to time, a cynical figure would appear in his mind. Why is my mind filled with him now? Have I really fallen for him? There was a hint of confusion in her eyes. Although she had lived for thousands of years, this was the first time she had such a feeling. Is this love? Who is it? At this moment, the guard outside suddenly yelled coldly, waking Zhuo Xiaoxian up. She quickly looked over and saw a black figure standing in the air above the lake. Her eyes trembled slightly. That figure was so familiar. The black figure stood in the air above the lake, motionless. Who is it? The 2 guards were vigilant. "Hey, are you all right?" Suddenly, the black figure spoke. "You!" Zhuo Xiaoxian suddenly stood up with a hint of excitement on her face. "Don't misunderstand. I'm just here to have a look." The black figure said coldly. "That's right. The black figure was Madman. Just here to have a look?" Zhuo Xiaoxian was slightly stunned. She quickly looked at the 2 guards and said, "You 2 can leave first." "But miss," the 2 of them were a little anxious. "Leave, leave." Zhuo Xiaoxian urged impatiently. The 2 of them smiled helplessly at each other. then turned around and left quickly. Zhuo Xiaoxian sat on the windowsill again, looking at Madman's back. She was secretly delighted. He was clearly here to see her, yet he pretended to say that it was just on the way. Why would he come here on the way? Her eyes flickered with a hint of cunning as she asked, "So where are you going?" "What does it have to do with you?" Madman raised his eyebrows. "Can I just ask?" Zhuo Xiaoxian wore a wronged expression. Women are always full of nonsense. Madman harumphed coldly and said calmly, "All right, I'm leaving." "So soon?" Zhuo Xiaoxian panicked. "What else?" "Stay here for the night." Madman had the urge to slap himself as soon as he finished speaking. How could he say something so tasteless? Zhuo Xiaoxian blushed after hearing the words. She cursed in a low voice, "Pervert." Cough, cough. Madman let out a dry cough to conceal the awkwardness in his heart. Zhuo Xiaoxian gathered her courage and said while looking at Madman's back, "If you're not busy, why don't you keep me company?" "I'm very busy," Madman said. Zhuo Xiaoxian's face was filled with disappointment. "But since you're begging me so earnestly, I'll be merciful." Madman turned around and landed beside the windowsill. He did not look at Zhuo Xiaoxian. He crossed his arms and leaned against the wall beside the windowsill. This position was blocked by the corner of the windowsill. It was just enough to avoid the sight of both parties. However, the two of them were very close to each other. They could even smell each other's scent. However, for a moment, neither of them knew what to say. They were both silent there. "Elder Yu, look, he's there." Opposite, the two guards ran over with Elder Yu and stood on the opposite side of the lake. They pointed at Madman beside the windowsill and said to themselves. Elder Yu looked at Madman, and the corner of his mouth twitched slightly. It seemed that this matter had developed to the point where it could not be stopped. "Elder Yu, what should we do?" One of the guards transmitted his voice. "Let's wait and see first." Elder Yu waved his hand. To be honest, he did not know what to do either. If Zhuo Xiaoxian did not want to see this person, it would be fine. She could just chase him away. However, this girl looked like she was in love. She probably wanted this person to stay in the city, Lord's mansion, forever. There was a strange atmosphere in the quiet attic. Zhuo Xiaoxian was the first to open the topic. She lowered her head and asked directly, "Little Madman, have you missed me in the past 2 days?" Madman's expression froze. He shook his head and said no. "Heartless." Zhuo Xiaoxian pouted. "Fuck, if I didn't miss you, would I come to see you now?" Madman said angrily, "Then you admit that it wasn't on the way." Zhuo Xiaoxian was delighted. Madman slapped himself in the face. Zhuo Xiaoxian heard the slap and quickly flew out of the windowsill. She looked at Madman and said with heartache, "Are you crazy? Why did you hit yourself? Why did you run out?" Madman raised his eyebrows. "I came out to see if you've been beaten silly." Zhuo Xiaoxian rolled her eyes. Madman was a little flustered. Looking at that exquisite figure and that soft skin, there seemed to be some kind of primitive force that was about to erupt from the depths of his heart. Because the current Zhuo Xiaoxian was wearing a tulle dress which was very tempting. "Go in." Madman looked away and said angrily, "We're not in the black tortoise realm now. Why should I listen to you?" Zhuo Xiaoxian raised her head like a proud little princess. "You," Madman was furious, "aren't you very powerful? Why don't you dare to look at me now? You must be feeling guilty." Zhuo Xiaoxian looked at him provocatively. "Who said I don't dare to look?" Madman looked at Zhuo Xiaoxian. Looking at that exquisite face and those red lips, he could no longer control the primitive force in his heart. Suddenly, he hugged Zhuo Xiaoxian and pressed the two of them together. "You!" Zhuo Xiaoxian immediately panicked, and her heart was beating wildly. However, before she could finish, Madman lowered his head and kissed her. In an instant, the two of them stood there in a daze as if they had been electrocuted. on the opposite side of the lake. The two guards hurriedly transmitted their voices. "Elder Yu, look!" Elder Yu's face darkened as he yelled. "What are you looking at? Turn around!" The two of them shrunk their necks and quickly turned around, mumbling unhappily, "Aren't you enjoying it too?" Elder Yu's expression immediately turned awkward, and he immediately turned around. "Elder Yu, what do you think we should do? Should we stop it or not?" The two of them asked softly. "I don't know." Elder Yu shook his head. The speed of their development was a little beyond his and Zhuo Tianqing's expectations. One of the guards said, "Why don't you inform the master?" This, Elder Yu pondered for a moment and nodded. "All right, but you're not allowed to peek. Otherwise, I'll gouge your eyeballs out." We won't." The two guards hurriedly waved their hands. Beside the window, Madman and Zhuo Shaoxian were still hugging each other. Their lips were pressed together, and it felt as if time had stopped. Both of their hearts were beating faster and faster. "What are you doing?" After a long while, Zhuo Shaoxian finally recovered. She hurriedly pushed Madman away, lowered her head, and said angrily with a red face. Madman also finally came back to his senses. He smacked his lips as if he wanted more and mumbled, "So fragrant." "What did you say?" Zhuo Shaoxian immediately raised her head and glared at Madman, her face flushed red. Nothing. Madman hurriedly waved his hand. "You're bullying me too." "Humph." Zhuo Shaoxian snorted and turned around, her back facing Madman. It didn't feel like she was angry at all, but more like she was acting coquettishly. Madman stood behind her, at a loss for a moment. "Huh." Suddenly, a familiar voice sounded in Madman's mind. Madman was slightly startled, and immediately raised his head to scan the void. "Isn't this Qin Feiyang's voice? Why is this bastard here too? Has he been following him?" At that moment, Madman fell into an awkward situation. This bastard must have seen everything, and he would definitely laugh at him in the future. "Don't just stand there. This is a good opportunity." Fire Lotus's voice sounded in Madman's mind again. Madman's eyes were instantly filled with anger. He went to Fire Lotus for help because he didn't want Qin Feiyang to know that he had run out. However, this 10,000-year-old leftover woman not only didn't help him keep it a secret, but also told Qin Feiyang, and they came together to join in the fun. How unreliable. Chapter 3049. It's not like this is something shameful. Why are you so shy? Hurry up. We're all cheering you on. Qin Feiyang's helpless voice sounded. "We." Madman was slightly stunned and hurriedly asked, "Who's watching?" "Everyone's here," Qin Feiyang replied. "Martial Uncle Madman, I'm here too." Wang Xiaojie's voice sounded. Madman's face was dark. Who were these people? Did they have nothing to do? "Brother Madman, go for it. We have faith in you." Long Tianyu's voice sounded. The corner of Madman's mouth twitched. As expected, they were a group of people who had nothing to do. He couldn't help but look at Zhuo Shaoxian's back. A hint of tenderness flashed through his eyes. Tenderness? It was very rare to see that from him. It was obvious that he was truly moved. In the end, he gritted his teeth, raised his hands, and slowly hugged Zhuo Shaoxian from behind. Zhuo Shaoxian naturally noticed it. She glanced at Madman's hands, and her body stiffened slightly. However, she didn't resist. Madman saw that she didn't resist, so he hugged Zhuo Shaoxian and pulled her into his arms. Zhuo Shaoxian's face was so red that it could drip water. Not bad. You're worth teaching. Black Tortoise World." Qin Feiyang laughed. "You still have the nerve to talk about him. Don't you know what kind of person you were back then? Speaking of which, this madman is more courageous and promising than you." Qin Ruishuang looked down on him. Qin Feiyang's smile froze. He glared at Qin Ruishuang angrily. "At least he's better than you. A 10,000-year-old leftover woman. A 10,000-year-old leftover woman? Qin Rushuang was stunned. She immediately bared her teeth and roared, "You little bastard, I'll beat you to death today." Outside, Zhuo Shaoxian seemed to have adapted and accepted it. She took the initiative to snuggle in Madman's arms. The lake rippled, and the moonlight was enchanting. The two hugged each other quietly, like a pair of immortal couples. In another place, in the centermost hall, Zhuo Tianqing looked at the city lord above and said with a smile, "Sir, this is the result of Elder Yu's investigation." When the city lord heard that, he nodded and said, "As long as it is not the Demon Royal Hall's people, it is fine." But Zhuo Tianqing frowned. "I know you have your concerns, but you and I don't have the final say in matters of the heart. Xian has also grown up. She has her own opinions and knows her own choices. We'll talk about it later. Even if you and I were to stop it, would we be able to? Not only can we not stop him, we even have to pray that this little lunatic is also interested in Xian. After all, we still don't know this little lunatic's attitude toward Xian. Or what if it's just Xian's wishful thinking? How sad would Xian be then?" The city lord shook his head. Zhuo Tianqing smiled bitterly. Why did it feel like he had to curry favor with this little lunatic and beg him to like his daughter? All right, I'll contact the Vice Alliance leader and explain the situation to him. The city lord didn't ask Zhuo Tianqing to leave. He directly took out the divine sound transmission stone. Whoa! Very soon, a shadow appeared. This was an old man in a green robe. His back was stooped, and he held a dark, green, snake-shaped walking stick in his hand. The old man sat on a chair carved out of stone, his eyes flickering with a faint light. "Greetings to Lord Vice Alliance leader." The city lord and Zhuo Tianqing immediately stood up and bowed. The green-robed old man nodded. The city lord said respectfully, "Lord, I'm sending you a message to report Wang Hui's matter." "Speak," the green-robed old man said with a hoarse voice. "We have investigated carefully. The cause of this matter is all because of Wang Hui's son, Wang Feng. He bullied men and women and did evil. As the city lord of Tianfeng City, not only did Wang Hui not deal with it impartially, he even used the power in his hands to condone and protect him. This caused a series of events to happen." The city lord said, "I see." The green-robed old man nodded in realization and asked, "Then who are the two people who killed Wang Hui?" The city lord said, "According to our investigation, one of them is called Qin Feiyang and the other is Madman Mo. Qin Feiyang, Madman Mo?" The green-robed old man suddenly stood up and looked at the city lord in surprise. And, looking at the green-robed old man's reaction, the city lord was slightly stunned and asked suspiciously, "Lord, do you know them?" The green-robed old man did not answer. His eyes flickered, and then he returned to the stone chair and said indifferently, "Even if this matter is caused by Wang Hui's son, Wang Hui is still a member of our rogue Cultivator Alliance." The city lord's heart trembled and said respectfully, "Lord, please tell us. If this matter is not investigated, then the world will inevitably talk about our rogue Cultivator Alliance behind our backs. Therefore, we must kill these two people as an example to others." The green-robed old man's eyes flashed coldly. What? The city lord and Zhuo Tianqing were shocked. Killing one as an example to others. Didn't that mean they had to kill Qin Feiyang and Madman Mo? Didn't you hear me clearly? The green-robed old man frowned. Yes. The city lord quickly nodded and said, "But it's not their fault. If we do this, won't it be unfair? Fairness is based on strength. The words of those who are strong are just. You must kill them, or I will kill you." The green-robed old man said coldly. Lord, what else did Zhuo Tianqing want to say? But the city lord quickly stared at him, indicating for him to shut up. Then the city lord looked at the green-robed old man and said respectfully, "Yes, we will deal with it immediately." N. The green-robed old man nodded. Then his shadow dissipated. "What exactly is going on?" Zhuo Tianqing frowned. "I don't know either, but this is the vice leader's idea. We have no choice." The city lord shook his head and sighed. "What about Xian Er?" Zhuo Tianqing asked. "Time heals everything," the city lord said. "Sigh, I only hope that Xian Er won't hate us in the future." Zhuo Tianqing sighed. "There's nothing we can do even if she hates us. If we dare to disobey, we won't be the only ones to die. Xian Er will also be implicated." The city lord looked helpless. "Then that's the only way." Zhuo Tianqing shook his head. Swish! At this moment, old Yu entered the main hall and said respectfully to the city lord, "Greetings, lord." "You're welcome." The city lord smiled slightly. "What are you doing here?" Zhuo Tianqing looked at him suspiciously. "There's something I need to report to you," old Yu said. "What's the matter?" The two of them were puzzled. "That kid surnamed Mo is here." Old Yu smiled bitterly. "What? He's here? When did he come? Where is he?" The two of them hurriedly asked. "He's with Xian Er, and—" Old Yu looked at the two of them with a helpless expression. "Hurry up and tell us." The two of them urged. Old Yu smiled and said they even kissed. "What?" The two of them froze. "They actually kissed? Are you sure?" Zhuo Tianqing looked at old Yu and asked. "I saw it with my own eyes." Old Yu nodded. "Then why didn't you stop them?" Zhuo Tianqing said angrily. "Is this something I can stop?" Old Yu was speechless. "My dear brother, this matter is serious," Zhuo Tianqing shouted and immediately rushed out of the main hall. "Serious?" Old Yu was slightly stunned. Looking at the city lord, he asked, "What happened to him?" "Sigh, there's something you don't know. Just now, the vice leader has already given the order to eliminate these two." The city lord sighed. "It can't be." Old Yu's body stiffened, and he hurriedly asked, "Didn't you make it clear?" "We've already told the truth, but the vice leader must kill one to warn the others," the city lord said. "Kill one to warn the others? Is this equivalent to protecting Wang Hui and his son in disguise?" Old Yu frowned. "What can we do about the vice leader's order?" The city lord shook his head and said, "Let's not talk about it for now. Let's hurry over and take a look." "Okay." Old Yu nodded. The two of them rushed out of the main hall like lightning. "Little lunatic, do you really like me?" In front of the pavilion, under the moonlight, it was incomparably romantic. "I don't like you." Lunatic shook his head. Zhuo Shaoxian said angrily, "If you don't like me, why are you hugging me? You even forcefully kissed me." "I like it," Lunatic said proudly. "Stinky hooligan." Zhuo Shaoxian blushed and cursed. After being together in the Black Tortoise world for 15,000 years, how could she not understand lunatic? This was a guy who didn't mean what he said. Opposite, Zhuo Tianqing appeared. "Sir." The two guards hurriedly bowed. Zhuo Tianqing nodded and looked directly at the pavilion opposite. Seeing Lunatic and Zhuo Shaoxian snuggling together, he couldn't help but feel a trace of pity in his eyes. Old Yu and the city lord also rushed over. Seeing the scene, they also felt a little uncomfortable. From here, the two of them were quite compatible, especially Shaoxian. Her face was completely filled with happiness. Old Yu frowned and sent a voice transmission. "City Lord, why don't you go and plead with the vice leader again?" "It's useless." The city lord shook his head. Just take it as the vice leader's firm attitude. If he went to plead, he would definitely get into trouble. But he had watched Zhuo Shaoxian grow up. In his eyes, she was like a granddaughter. It wasn't easy to find happiness. Old Yu really couldn't bear to destroy it. Since things have come to this, there's nothing else to say. We must break them up. The city lord took a deep breath, took a step forward, and landed in front of Lunatic and Zhuoxian. Father! Zhuoxian quickly struggled out of Lunatic's arms and looked at Zhuo Tiansheng in panic. Lunatic's expression stiffened, slightly too. This was a little awkward. Zhuo Tiansheng glanced at Lunatic, then looked at Zhuoxian and said angrily, "You're an unmarried girl, and you're hugging a man in public. What's wrong with you?" "Father! Zhuoxian lowered her head in panic, like a child who had done something wrong. It's my fault. Don't scold her." Lunatic stepped forward and grabbed Zhuoxian's hand while looking at Zhuo Tiansheng. After all, he was his future father-in-law. He had to treat him nicely. Zhuoxian glanced at Lunatic. Feeling the warmth from Lunatic's hand, she felt a lot more at ease. "I really want to scold you. Not only did you kidnap my daughter, you're harassing her now. Do you really think you can do whatever you want just because you saved me once?" Zhuo Tiansheng said angrily. Lunatic raised his eyebrows and said, I didn't do anything wrong. I just like your daughter." "Like, what do you have to like her? Can you give her happiness?" Zhuo Tiansheng yelled. "Yes." Lunatic nodded without hesitation. Chapter 3050. Hearing Madman's answer without any hesitation, Zhuo Tiansheng couldn't help but be dazed. This kind of attitude couldn't be faked, because he was also someone who had been through it. From Madman's eyes, he didn't see any signs of faking it. This kid was serious. Zhuo Tiansheng took a deep breath and looked at Zhuoxian. "Girl, you also believe that he can bring you happiness?" "Yes." Zhuoxian nodded. Zhuo Tiansheng looked at his daughter with a serious gaze. He couldn't help but have an impulse. "Why don't you elope? The further you go, the better. Don't come back." However, when he thought of the deputy leader's strength and the power of the rogue cultivator alliance in the eastern continent, he couldn't help but feel weak. Although the rogue cultivator alliance wasn't as powerful as the demon hall, it was spread throughout the entire eastern continent. No matter where they ran, they wouldn't be able to escape the pursuit of the rogue cultivator alliance. If he really allowed it, it would only harm his daughter. Not only was the life of a fugitive difficult, it was also very dangerous. They could lose their lives at any time. He didn't want his daughter to live such a life, and he didn't want to worry about her every day. "Old Zhuo, why are you so angry?" Suddenly, the city lord and elder Yu walked out. "Foster father!" Elder Yu, Zhuoxian, hurriedly looked at the two of them for help. "What? Foster father?" Madman was stunned. Zhuoxian pointed at the city lord and said with a smile, "That's right, he's my foster father and also the city lord of Wind Sea City." City lord. Madman's pupils constricted. The city lord of Cloud Sea City was a perfected ruler, so the city lord of Wind Sea City was definitely not bad. He didn't expect this woman to have such a terrifying foster father. Did she have a backer? The city lord and Madman sat in front of Zhuo Tiansheng. Zhuo Tiansheng looked at the two of them suspiciously. "I'll handle it," the city lord said secretly, then looked at Zhuoxian and said with a smile, "Aren't you going to introduce him?" Yes. Zhuoxian nodded, pulled Madman to the city lord and said, "Foster father, he's the little madman I told you about." The city lord sized Madman up curiously. "Greetings, greetings, city lord." Madman cupped his hands in an unnatural manner. Zhuoxian pulled Madman's sleeve and said in a low voice, "Don't call him Castellan." "Then what should I be called?" Madman was suspicious. "Idiot, of course I'll call him uncle." "Don't tell me I'll call him adoptive father too?" Zhuoxian rolled her eyes. The city lord chuckled and said, "It's indeed too early to call him foster father. Isn't that just a matter of time?" Zhuoxian grinned. Ugh! The city lord was taken aback. He smiled bitterly and said, Girl, you seem to be afraid that you won't be able to get married. Shuo Shaoxian smiled mischievously. The city lord looked at the madman again and said with a smile, Xian has mentioned you more than once in front of me. That's her personality. She talks a lot of nonsense. Madman said uncomfortably. This was really the first time in his life, and he was a little nervous. Who's talking nonsense? Zhuo Shaoxian glared at the lunatic discontentedly. You, madman said. You bastard! Zhuo Shaoxian glared at him angrily. Couldn't he save her some face in front of her 3 relatives? All right. Can you pay attention to the situation first before flirting? The city lord was helpless. The madman and Zhuo Shaoxian smiled awkwardly. The city lord looked at the madman and asked with a smile, I heard that you have a friend. Yes, the madman nodded. Since you and Xian have already developed to this point, why don't you invite him to the city, Lord Mansion? Also, there's a misunderstanding between you and old Zhuo. Take this opportunity to resolve this misunderstanding. Of course. The most important thing is to discuss the matter between you and Xian. The city lord smiled. Are we talking about marriage already? The madman looked at the city lord in a daze. What else? Since you guys have already kissed, then of course it has to be resolved quickly. The city lord looked at the 2 of them and said, Zhuo Xiaoxian's cheeks were boiling hot again. She glared at the madman and complained, It's all your fault. You made me be laughed at by my adoptive father. The madman smiled embarrassedly. However, wasn't it too soon to talk about marriage now? Yes, he had indeed kissed Zhuo Shaoxian, but shouldn't there be a buffer period? Why? You don't want to. If you don't want to, then you won't be happy. Xian is not only the apple of old Zhuo's eye, she's also my precious treasure. I won't allow anyone to hurt her. Besides, there's a saying that goes, those who don't fall in love with the purpose of marriage are all hooligans. The city lord looked at the madman unhappily. City lord, you're exaggerating. At this moment, accompanied by a faint laugh, Qin Feiyang appeared beside the madman. Qin Dage? Zhuo Shaoxian was slightly stunned and quickly asked, Why are you here? Ahem. Qin Feiyang coughed dryly. He couldn't say that he had been secretly watching, so he smiled and said, I just happened to pass by. Zhuo Shaoxian was stunned. Another coincidence. How could there be so many coincidences in the world? Did he really think she was an idiot? Qin Feiyang quickly changed the topic. He looked at the 3 of them and bowed. Junior Qin Feiyang greets the 3 seniors. The city lord sized up Qin Feiyang. Qin Feiyang gave him a very good first impression. He didn't have the slightest arrogance of a young man, and he seemed very polite. Furthermore, he had such a temperament. Even when facing the city lord, he was neither servile nor overbearing. Senior City Lord, I actually didn't take those misunderstandings to heart a long time ago. Moreover, I'm the one who should really apologize, because it was I who asked Senior Brother Madman to come to Cloud Sea City and kidnap Shaoxian. So, I solemnly apologize to the 3 of you. Qin Feiyang cupped his hands. There's no need for that. After all, your actions are understandable because it was old Zhuo who wanted to deal with you first. The city lord smiled. City lord's magnanimity is truly admirable. But now that I think about it, if it weren't for these things, would Senior Brother Madman and Shaoxian be together? No way. They wouldn't even have known each other for the rest of their lives. So, this can be considered as a coincidence that formed a golden match. Qin Feiyang chuckled. That makes sense. This is fate. The city lord nodded and laughed. Then he looked at Zhuo Tianqing and said, Old Zhuo, don't keep a bitter face. Is this what it is? Yes, no discord, no concord. Zhuo Tianqing smiled bitterly. What golden match? It was clearly an ill-fated relationship. Enough. This girl will eventually get married when she grows up. Hurry up and tell the chef to prepare some good wine and dishes. Let's have a few drinks with this future son-in-law, the city lord said. Drink? Zhuo Tianxing was stunned. Wasn't he going to kill him? Why was he drinking? Hurry up, the city lord urged. Okay, Zhuo Tianxing nodded, turned to look at the two guards by the lake, and said, Go and tell the kitchen to prepare some good wine and dishes and send them to the guest room. Yes, the two responded respectfully, turned around and ran away. Little brother, please. The city lord looked at Qin Feiyang and said with a smile, Senior, please. Qin Feiyang cupped his hands and smiled. The city lord chuckled and immediately walked toward a large hall. City lord, what are you doing? Zhuo Tianxing, an elder, you looked at the city lord in confusion. The city lord said, Don't you want to know more about them? If it wasn't for the deputy leader's order, this would definitely be necessary, but is it still necessary now? Zhuo Tianxing was suspicious. I'm quite curious about them. Really. Especially this Qin Feiyang, the calmness he showed in front of us is not something a young man should have. The city lord said. But the two were anxious. Don't worry, I know what I'm doing. The city lord smiled faintly. At the back, Qin Feiyang and Madman walked together, and Zhuo Shaoxian followed Madman from beginning to end. I didn't expect you to be so talkative. You've even brought up your golden marriage. Madman pursed his lips. Qin Dage, I also admire you. Zhuo Shaoxian giggled. Qin Feiyang shook his head and smiled and said, For your marriage, of course, I have to work hard. I didn't see you being so concerned about your own matters back then. Madman rolled his eyes. Little Madman, Qin Dage is being kind. Why are you still scolding him? Besides, if Qin Dage didn't care, how could he marry sister-in-law? Zhuo Shaoxian looked at Madman with dissatisfaction. Why are you interrupting when men are talking? Madman glared. Zhuo Shaoxian stuck out her tongue. Madman glanced at Zhuo Shaoxian, then looked at Madman and said, See, justice is in the heart. Humph, Madman said in disdain. He then glanced at the city lord and transmitted his voice. Are you really going to talk about the marriage? Of course. I don't mean to criticize you, but why are you being so impulsive? You've just broken the window paper, and you're already going to kiss someone else. Qin Feiyang was speechless. Do you think I'm like you? Stop wasting time. Madman wore a disdainful look. All right, you're good. Qin Feiyang let out a helpless smile. Not long after, the group arrived at a huge hall. The hall was not huge, and the decorations were not luxurious. There was a dining table made of mahogany, with a diameter of around 3 to 4 meters. It was surrounded by more than 10 exquisitely carved wooden chairs. There was also a tea table beside it with sandalwood burning on top of it. The aroma spread across the hall. Please have a seat. The city lord went to the main seat and said to Qin Feiyang and Madman with a smile, Then we won't be courteous. Qin Feiyang let out a smile and dragged Madman to sit opposite the city lord. Zhuo Shaoxian naturally sat beside Madman too. However, Zhuo Tianxing was not happy about it. He said, Xian come sit beside me. Ah, Zhuo Shaoxian glanced at Zhuo Tianxing with a confused look. You're not even married yet. Zhuo Tianxing snapped. Zhuo Shaoxian was slightly startled before she let out an embarrassed smile and ran to Zhuo Tianxing's side. Girl, you can't wait to get married right now, right? The city lord looked at Zhuo Shaoxian in amusement. I'm not. Zhuo Shaoxian nodded with a blushing face. The city lord shook his head with a smile. He glanced at Qin Feiyang and Madman and said, You're not outsiders now. Feel free to tell me if you need anything. Sure. Qin Feiyang nodded. His first impression of the city lord was quite pleasant. He was humble without any arrogance. Chapter 3051. After chatting for a while, more than a dozen maids entered the main hall with a variety of dishes. The inner hall was suddenly filled with the fragrance of dishes. There were also a few pots of wine. Before it was opened, one could smell the rich wine fragrance. Pour it for the two little brothers. Two maids served Qin Feiyang and Madman. As soon as the city lord spoke, they immediately poured wine into the wine cups in front of the two people. The wine cup was not big, about 1 or 2 cups. The wine was sparkling like jade, and the wine fragrance was even stronger, making Madman swallow his saliva. But Qin Feiyang didn't feel anything. No matter how good the wine was, it couldn't be compared to the most ordinary cup of tea in his eyes. This wine is the famous Heavenly Mountain Dew of my Windsea City. Ordinary people can't drink it. The city lord smiled. Then I'll thank Senior for your hospitality. Qin Feiyang smiled slightly. The city lord smiled, picked up the wine cup, and said, "Come, let's drink to our friendship." Zhuo Tianqing, an elder, you also picked up the wine cup. Qin Feiyang and Madman looked at each other, also picked up the wine cup, toasted the three of them, and then put it to their mouths to taste. "How is it?" the city lord asked with a smile. They were straightforward and drank it in one gulp. "Not bad." Madman nodded. It was a level better than the heavenly immortal wine and could already be called a divine wine. He then raised his head and drank it in one gulp. But Qin Feiyang only took a sip and then put down the wine cup. "Brother Qin, what are you doing?" The city lord looked at him suspiciously. "Senior, don't laugh. Junior doesn't know how to drink." Qin Feiyang smiled apologetically. "Haha," the city lord couldn't help but laugh. A young man who didn't drink was really rare. After 3 rounds of wine, the city lord put down the wine cup and looked at Madman with a smile. "Since you and Xian have already developed to this point, then shouldn't you tell us something?" "Tell us something." Madman was taken aback. "For example, your identity, your background, and your family. When children get married, both families have to know each other, right?" The city lord smiled. Madman fell silent. "You don't even have this much sincerity." Zhuo Tianqing frowned. "Father!" Zhuo Shaoxian looked at Zhuo Tianqing unhappily. "This time, just sit still and don't interrupt." Zhuo Tianqing glared at her, then looked at the madman and said, "We know nothing about you. How can I be at ease handing my daughter over to you like this?" Madman remained silent. There was even a trace of annoyance on his face. The mystery of his birth had always been a thorn in his heart. He also wanted to know, and he also wanted someone to tell him. However, the only person in the world who could possibly know about this was the guardian of the ancient realm. No matter how much he begged, the guardian refused to tell him. Therefore, whenever he thought of this matter, he would feel very irritated, and because of this he was very unwilling to think about it. But now, Zhuo Tianqing was constantly interrogating him. With his temper, it was already very rare for him to be able to endure and not say a word. If it were anyone else, they would have left long ago. Sigh. Qin Feiyang naturally understood Madman very well. He sighed deeply and raised his head to look at Zhuo Tianqing and the other two. "Seniors, you might not know, but senior brother Madman doesn't have any family." "Huh." The 3 of them were stunned. "I won't hide it from you 3 seniors. Senior brother Madman doesn't even know his surname now, because he is an orphan. He was raised by his foster father since he was young." Qin Feiyang said. "Orphan." The 3 of them were stunned. "What about his foster father?" Zhuo Tianqing was suspicious. He was also assassinated many years ago and died an unnatural death. Qin Feiyang sighed. The city lord and the other 2 looked at each other, their hearts trembling. No wonder this child became so depressed when it came to his family. It turned out that there was a past that he couldn't bear to look back on. At the same time, looking at the silent madman, Zhuo Shaoxian couldn't help but feel heartache. Normally, when she looked at Lunatic, she thought that he was a simple-minded person. But who would have thought that deep in his heart, there was actually so much sadness hidden in his past? I'm sorry. The city lord smiled apologetically. It's okay. You will know sooner or later anyway. Qin Feiyang shook his head. What about you? The city lord asked with a smile. Me. Qin Feiyang was slightly stunned and said with a faint smile, This junior is just a nobody. A nobody would have a superior heaven-defying artifact? Aren't you being too modest? The city lord chuckled. It's just luck. I can get to where I am today because of the support of my friends and my own hard work. Qin Feiyang shook his head. The city lord couldn't help but show a trace of disappointment in his eyes. After all this time, he didn't find out anything. If this child was telling the truth, it would be fine. But if he was being vague, then he was not ordinary. Then, if we let little Madman marry into the city lord mansion, would you be willing? The city lord thought for a moment and said with a smile, Marry into the family? Qin Feiyang and Madman looked at each other. Since you don't have a family, it's not a bad idea to marry into our city lord mansion. After you and Xian are get married, this will be your home. We will also be your family. Elder Yu laughed hoarsely. I have never been alone. I have brothers and companions. They are my family, Madman said. Elder Yu smiled bitterly. This was considered a tactful rejection. All right then, we've talked enough. It's time for us to get down to business. The city lord smiled slightly. Zhuo Tiansheng and Elder Yu's hearts skipped a beat. Zhuo Tiansheng hurriedly sent a voice transmission. Should we send Xiaoxian away first? Definitely. The city lord replied secretly. Zhuo Tiansheng immediately looked at Zhuo Xiaoxian and said with a smile, Xianer, you go back first. We have something to discuss. What is it that I can't know? Zhuo Xiaoxian frowned. It's a secret. We promise to give you a surprise when the time comes. Good girl, listen to us. Zhuo Tianqing smiled. Zhuo Xiaoxian glanced at Madman, then at Zhuo Tianqing and nodded helplessly. All right. With that, she stood up and left with anticipation. The city lord looked at the maids who were serving at the side and waved his hand. You all can leave too. Yes. The group of maids bowed and replied, then turned around and left in a line. Following that, the city lord waved his hand, and the door of the hall slowly closed. Qin Feiyang and Madman exchanged glances, somewhat confused. The city lord smiled at the two of them and waved his arm again. A divine power barrier appeared and enveloped the entire hall. City lord, what's the meaning of this? Qin Feiyang was suspicious. Because there are some things that we can't let Xiaoxian know. Otherwise, she will hate us. The city lord smiled. Qin Feiyang frowned. What did that mean? But suddenly, from Elder Yu and Zhuo Tianqing's bodies, he could sense a faintly discernible killing intent. If it was anyone else, they wouldn't be able to sense it at all. Madman next to him didn't sense it at all. But he was different. He cultivated the kill art and was especially sensitive to killing intent. Even though the two of them concealed it perfectly, they still couldn't escape his senses. On the other hand, he didn't sense any killing intent from the city lord until now. It was clear how terrifying the city lord's shrewdness was. Qin Feiyang's eyes flickered slightly as he transmitted his voice. Senior brother Madman, be careful. Madman was taken aback. They might want to break up the couple. Qin Feiyang secretly said. Madman immediately frowned without leaving a trace. Actually, I'm really satisfied with you. And Xiaoxian also likes you very much. Both of you are in love with each other. To be honest, I really don't want to break up the two of you. But there are some things that even we don't have a choice. The city lord shook his head and sighed. Madman frowned. But the next moment, his face turned pale and he spat out a mouthful of blood. His entire body suddenly collapsed on the table powerlessly. What's going on? Qin Feiyang was shocked and hurriedly helped Madman up. He found that Madman's lips had turned black. Even the blood stain at the corner of his mouth had turned black. This was a sign of poisoning. "You guys!" Qin Feiyang immediately raised his head and looked at the three of them, but immediately after, he also felt weak all over and his head was dizzy. Then, he suddenly spat out a mouthful of blood. Furthermore, the blood was slowly turning pitch black. Madman sat up weakly and looked at Qin Feiyang's lips and bloodstains. He immediately became furious and roared, "What did you do?" "Isn't it obvious?" The city lord smiled slightly. "Why, even if you don't want your Shaoxian to be with me, you can just say so. I'll leave. Why do you have to be so ruthless?" Madman was burning with anger, and his consciousness became more and more dizzy. He never expected that the Tianyin realm really had a strong poison that could kill an undead realm expert. And Zhuo Shaoxian didn't actually leave. She just stood outside the door and waited. But with the soundproof barrier, she couldn't hear what was going on inside at all. Instead, she was still looking forward to it. "Didn't I say just now? I'm actually quite satisfied with you. But there are some things that we have no choice about." The city lord sighed. "Then who wants to get rid of us?" Qin Feiyang asked. "I can't say." The city lord shook his head. Qin Feiyang said in a deep voice, "Then when did you poison him?" Heavenly Mountain Dew. When old Zhuo asked the two guards to inform the kitchen to prepare the wine and dishes, I secretly sent them a voice transmission and asked them to put some spirit severing powder in the Heavenly Mountain Dew. As for this spirit severing powder, it's also a famous poison in the Eastern continent. It's colorless and odorless. One drop is enough to kill. The city lord smiled. Qin Feiyang said gloomily, "Then why weren't you poisoned?" "That's simple. Only the 2 pots of Heavenly Mountain Dew that you drank had spirit severing powder in them." The city lord held the wine cup and drank while smiling. Qin Feiyang was shocked. This person's shrewdness was really terrifying. From the beginning to the end, he didn't sense any killing intent. Even at this moment, he didn't sense any killing intent from the city lord. He was talking and laughing while taking people's lives. It could be said that this was the most shrewd person he had ever seen so far. He didn't leave any trace at all. Zhuo Tiansheng and Elder Yu glanced at the wine pot next to Qin Feiyang and Madman, and only then did they realize. It turned out that the city lord had already planned this. Spirit severing powder. They were very clear about this poison. Without the antidote, even if the gods descended to earth, they wouldn't be able to save them. Qin Feiyang and Elder Yu became more and more dizzy. Even though Qin Feiyang was immune to poison, he couldn't withstand the toxicity of this spirit severing powder. And they also found that the poison was not only corroding their bodies, but also their spirits. Chapter 3052. It wasn't their fault for being careless. It was the city lord who concealed it too well. Moreover, even if they thought of it, they would only think that the other party wanted to break up the couple and would never think that he wanted to get rid of them. Suddenly, Frenzy fell into the chair and his life fluctuations quickly dissipated. "Senior brother!" Qin Feiyang was shocked and hurriedly released his divine sense to check, and a trace of shock appeared in his eyes. He found that Frenzy's divine soul was shrouded in a black mist as if it was rotting. He hurriedly checked his divine soul and found that it was the same. This was spirit severing powder, corroding the divine soul. Because Qin Feiyang had only taken a small sip from beginning to end, he could still hold on. But Frenzy drank a lot, almost half a bottle. Qin Feiyang looked at the three of them and said in a deep voice, "Give us the antidote and we will leave immediately and never appear again." "Impossible." The city lord shook his head. Qin Feiyang's brows were filled with hostility as he roared, "I will say it one last time, give us the antidote!" The city lord continued to drink and had no intention of taking out the antidote. Good. Qin Feiyang was so angry that he laughed, his eyes flashing with strong killing intent as he said with a sinister smile, "Since you are so heartless, then don't blame me for being unrighteous." Qin Feiyang grabbed Frenzy and prepared to enter the black tortoise world. Zhuo Tianqing suddenly stood up and slapped Qin Feiyang's chest. Poof! Qin Feiyang spat out another mouthful of black blood and immediately crashed into the barrier set up by the city, Lord with frenzy like a meteor. His body was even more cracked, and the bloody scars were a ghastly sight. "You are courting death." But at this moment, Frenzy suddenly woke up and saw Qin Feiyang's situation. Killing intent surged in his eyes. "What? Zhuo Tianqing, an elder, you were shocked. Wasn't he already poisoned to death? How did he come back to life? Furthermore, even his jet-black lips were regaining their color. What was going on? Did he have the antidote?" The city lord who was drinking couldn't help but be startled when he saw this scene. Qin Feiyang also looked at Madman in astonishment. Madman grabbed Qin Feiyang and sent a surge of divine power into Qin Feiyang's body. This is... Qin Feiyang's eyes trembled. Isn't this Senior Brother Crazy's evil power? Could it be that Senior Brother Feng Zi's improvement had something to do with this evil force? He hurriedly looked at his sea of knowledge and was pleasantly surprised to find that when the evil energy entered his sea of knowledge, it quickly began to engulf the poisonous fog formed by the spirit severing powder. "Senior Brother, you!" Qin Feiyang looked at Madman in surprise. "Don't ask me. I didn't know that this evil force had the ability to devour poisonous fog. Earlier, after I fainted, the evil power took the initiative to devour the poison in my body." Madman transmitted. "I see." Qin Feiyang came to a sudden realization and immediately grabbed Madman and disappeared without a trace. "Not good," Zhuo Tianqing exclaimed. Elder Yu was also quite anxious. He never thought that the other party would be able to remove the poison of the spirit-severing powder. "This is unexpected." The city lord put down his wine cup and scanned the void. "Don't worry, as long as my barrier is still there, they won't be able to escape." Immediately, Zhuo Tianqing and Elder Yu released their divine sense and scanned the void. Sure enough, they found the Black Tortoise Realm. At this moment, the Black Tortoise Realm was floating where Qin Feiyang and Madman disappeared. This spatial divine item is very powerful. I tried it before, and even my superior heaven, defying divine artifact, couldn't break it. Zhuo Tianqing said in a deep voice. The city lord pondered and remained silent. Inside the Black Tortoise Realm. When Madman and Elder Yu appeared, Fire Lotus and the others immediately surrounded them, because they had been watching from the Black Tortoise Realm. "How are you two?" Mermaid Princess stepped forward to support Qin Feiyang, her face full of anxiety. "I'm fine." Qin Feiyang waved his hand. The evil power had almost devoured the poison in his body. Madman's gaze was also gloomy as he looked up at the image in the void. In the image, the city lord and the other two were silent and extremely quiet. "They're courting death." White-eyed Wolf smiled sinisterly. "Don't be rash. This city lord should be a perfected dominator. We're not his match." Qin Feiyang shook his head. "Then he can't do anything to us." Wang Ming sneered. Yang Li frowned and looked at Qin Feiyang. "They'll probably drag it out with us. What resources don't our Black Tortoise Realm have now? Why are you afraid of dragging it out?" White-eyed Wolf had a look of disdain. It was different now. In the past, when they only had the ancient castle, they were really worried about dragging it out, because at that time there were no resources in the ancient castle. But it was different now. Now that they had an independent world with endless resources, it didn't matter how long they dragged it out. They could also take the opportunity to calm down and cultivate properly. Seeing that the city lord didn't say anything, Zhuo Tianqing urged, "Hurry up and think of a solution. We can't drag it out with them like this." Although Qin Feiyang and Madman's cultivation wasn't very high, he felt uneasy. Letting them stay in the city, Lord's mansion, felt like 2 ticking time bombs. He didn't dare to relax for even a moment. "Father, godfather, have you finished discussing?" At this moment, Zhuo Xiaoxian's voice came from outside. Zhuo Tianqing and the other 2 immediately looked at the door. Xiaoxian was still outside. "City Lord, you know Xian Ari's temper. If we drag it out for too long, she'll definitely barge in." Zhuo Tianqing was burning with anxiety. The City Lord's eyes flickered. He suddenly waved his hand, and the door opened. "Why are you still opening the door?" Zhuo Tianqing was shocked. If his daughter saw this, wouldn't she be heartbroken? The City Lord ignored him. He looked at Zhuo Xiaoxian standing outside the door and smiled. "Come in." Zhuo Xiaoxian looked at the hall and found that there was a divine power barrier. A hint of suspicion crept into her eyes. She entered the hall. The City Lord waved his hand, and the door swiftly closed. After entering the hall, Zhuo Xiaoxian saw the black bloodstains on the table and the ground. She was shocked and said, "What's this? And where are they?" Qin Feiyang and Madman were nowhere to be seen in the hall. The City Lord remained silent. He raised his hand and grabbed at the air. Zhuo Xiaoxian immediately flew toward the City Lord uncontrollably. Following that, the City Lord grabbed Zhuo Xiaoxian's neck and exerted a little force. Zhuo Xiaoxian immediately began to struggle. "What are you?" Zhuo Tianqing and Old Man Yu immediately ran to the City Lord. Their faces were filled with panic. Why was he attacking Xiaoxian instead? Zhuo Xiaoxian was also in disbelief. She yelled with all her might, "Godfather, what are you doing?" Meanwhile, the Black Tortoise Realm, the poisonous mist inside Qin Feiyang's body, had been devoured by the evil force. The 2 had returned to normal. However, the sudden scene outside made them unable to stay calm. "What is he doing?" the mermaid princess exclaimed. The City Lord glanced at the sky and said calmly, "Qin Feiyang, Madman Amo, I know you can hear me. If you don't want Xiaoxian to die in front of you, come out now." What? He was using Zhuo Xiaoxian to force them to come out? Qin Feiyang and the others were filled with disbelief. How cruel was this guy? "Don't be rash. Zhuo Xiaoxian is his goddaughter. Besides, judging from his concern for Zhuo Xiaoxian, I don't think he's that cruel." Looking at the furious madman, Qin Batian immediately placed his hand on his shoulder and comforted him. However, before Qin Batian could finish a sentence, the City Lord spoke again. "Don't think I'm putting on an act." Following the words, the City Lord waved his hand. A stream of God force appeared and severed one of Zhuo Xiaoxian's arms. Fresh blood gushed out like a stream. "Damn it!" Madman's eyes turned bloodshot as he yelled, "Old Qin, send me out!" Outside, Zhuo Xiaoxian's face twisted in pain. She never thought her godfather, who loved her the most, would be so cruel to her. Besides, what exactly was going on? They were still having a pleasant conversation before they left the hall. How did it turn out like this in such a short time? Could that black blood stain be Big Brother Qin and Little Lunatics? Was the wine poisoned? On the side, Zhuo Tianqing and Elder Yu clenched their teeth in anger. "City Lord, what are you doing? We can think of another way." Zhuo Tianqing blurted out in a panic, "Shut up!" The City Lord glared at Zhuo Tianqing before he raised his head and continued, "Still not coming out?" Finishing the sentence, the City Lord waved his hand again. Zhuo Xiaoxian let out a cry of agony as her other arm was severed, causing blood to pour out. Zhuo Tianqing's heart was bleeding seeing this. He stared at the sky and begged, "Please come out. Otherwise he'll really kill Xiaoxian." He even dropped to his knees and begged in desperation, "I'll ask you one last time. Do you want to come out or not?" The City Lord's eyes were filled with murderous intent. He tightened his grip on Zhuo Xiaoxian's arm. Streams of blood immediately flowed out from the corners of Zhuo Xiaoxian's mouth. Her pale face looked extremely miserable and despairing. Whoosh! At that instant, two figures appeared, who were none other than Qin Feiyang and Maniac. At this moment, both of their faces were as dark as water. The city lord glanced at the two and said with a calm smile, "It seems like you really care about Xiaoxian. Let her go. Come at me if you have anything to say." Madman said word by word, his hands tightly clenched together. "Got it." The city lord nodded. As he let go of Zhuo Xiaoxian, a terrifying god force sprang toward the two. "Don't!" Zhuo Xiaoxian screamed as she dashed forward, ignoring the danger to her body. "Xiaoxian!" Zhuo Tianqing's eyes widened in anger. "Elder," you let out a furious roar too. The city lord's cultivation was so terrifying. How could Zhuo Xiaoxian possibly resist his god force? Qin Feiyang and Maniac were startled too. They tried to stop it, but it was too late. Zhuo Xiaoxian was like a miserable moth, flying toward the divine power. The city lord rose to his feet after seeing this. Bang! The god force collided with Zhuo Xiaoxian. Following a painful cry, Zhuo Xiaoxian's flesh was shattered into pieces. "Xiaoxian, how could you be so stupid, so stupid?" Zhuo Tianqing cried out in grief. "Elder, you burst into tears too." Qin Feiyang yelled. "Her soul is still here. There's still time, quick!" Zhuo Tianqing and Elder Yu shuddered. They raised their heads and immediately dashed toward the source of the voice. However, the crazy man reacted even faster. Before Qin Feiyang finished talking, he had already dashed out, raised his arm, and grabbed towards Zhuo Xiaoxian's soul. The god force turned into a terrifying ripple. The tables and chairs were shattered into pieces. Maniac's flesh was shattered too. Chapter 3053. However, the madman was not afraid at all. His eyes were filled with determination as he grabbed Zhuo Xiaoxian's divine soul. At this moment, there was only a wisp of Zhuo Xiaoxian's divine soul left. Because her cultivation was too weak, she could not hold on for too long under the fluctuation of divine power. After grabbing Zhuo Xiaoxian's last wisp of divine soul, he quickly retreated to Qin Feiyang's side. In the process of retreating, his body had also reached its limit and shattered, leaving only his divine soul. Qin Feiyang waved his hand and quickly brought the two divine souls into the Black Tortoise realm. Wait. But then, the city lord spoke. Qin Feiyang looked up at the city lord and said, "They've already become like this. Are you still not willing to let go?" The city lord glanced at Qin Feiyang, then at the divine soul that Qin Feiyang was protecting. With a wave of his hand, the fluctuation of divine power dissipated. Then, he took out a wooden chair and leaned on it as if he was exhausted. Zhuo Tianqing and Old Man Yu looked at each other and stood aside silently, not daring to say a word. Qin Feiyang stared at the city lord and did not speak again. The madman's divine soul also turned into a human form and carefully protected Zhuo Xiaoxian's last wisp of divine soul in his hand. Fine. After a long while, the city lord shook his head and sighed. Qin Feiyang and the others looked at the city lord in surprise. The city lord looked up at the madman and sighed. For you, Xiaoxian even sacrificed her own life. And for saving Xiaoxian, you did the same. Are you sure you love each other deeply? I also believe that you can give Xiaoxian happiness. This, Zhuo Tianqing and Old Man Yu looked at each other and said suspiciously, Are you doing this to test their feelings? No. If he didn't risk his life to save Xiaoxian's last wisp of divine soul, Xiaoxian would really die. Because I never thought that Xiaoxian would be willing to sacrifice herself for him. I underestimated Xiaoxian's feelings for him. The city lord shook his head. So now, the two were suspicious. They've moved me. The city lord smiled faintly. Hearing this, Qin Feiyang and the mad scientist looked at each other with joy in their eyes. Zhuo Tiansheng and Elder, you were the same. But then, Zhuo Tiansheng and the other two became nervous. The city master clearly wanted to help Madman and Xiao Xian, but how was he going to explain this to the Vice Alliance master? One had to know. The Vice Alliance master had given a death order. If they didn't kill the two of them, they would die. Are you happy now? I'll let you and Xiao Xian be together. But let me tell you, if you dare to bully Xiao Xian, I won't let you off. The city lord stared at the madman and said gloomily, I don't know how to. Madman shook his head. All right, take Xiao Xian and leave. Don't come back, ever. The city lord waved his hand. Thank you. The madman bowed and looked at Qin Feiyang. However, Qin Feiyang did not immediately bring the two of them to the Black Tortoise realm. He sized up Zhuo Tiansheng and Elder Yu for a moment, then looked at the city lord and asked, Is there something you're unable to say? This has nothing to do with you. The city lord shook his head. Tell me, I might be able to help. Qin Feiyang said. The city lord shouted, I already said it has nothing to do with you. What are you still talking about? Get lost. Qin Feiyang smiled helplessly and immediately brought the madman and Zhuo Xiaoxian's soul into the Black Tortoise realm. It really scared us to death. Fortunately, it was a close call. The mermaid princess and the others surrounded them with a smile on their faces. Outside, the city lord also waved his hand and the barrier dissipated. However, in his mind, the Black Tortoise realm never left. I told you to get lost, didn't you hear me? The city lord said angrily. Qin Feiyang sighed and could only leave with the Black Tortoise realm. Early the next morning, a large number of guards rushed out of the city lord's mansion and went to the various city gates to post notices. The general content of the notice. Zhuo Tiansheng personally wrote the notice, severing his relationship with Zhuo Xiaoxian as father and daughter and putting Zhuo Xiaoxian, Qin Feiyang, and Madman Mo on the wanted list. And there was a reward. The moment the notice was released, it immediately caused a huge uproar. Everyone in Wind Sea City knew that Zhuo Xiaoxian was the apple of Zhuo Tiansheng's eye. He was afraid that she would melt in his hands. But why did he publicly sever his relationship with his daughter? And who are Qin Feiyang and Madman Mo? Did Zhuo Tiansheng sever his relationship with his daughter have anything to do with them? Everyone was puzzled. Naturally, this matter became a hot topic of discussion after meals. Similarly, Zhuo Tiansheng's wives and children were also very puzzled by this matter. As family, of course, they knew Zhuo Xiaoxian's position in Zhuo Tiansheng's heart. In their opinion, this was an extremely unbelievable matter. However, the arrest warrant had already been issued, and it would not be fake. Hence, they hypocritically went to ask about it. But in the end, what they received was Zhuo Tiansheng's roar and anger. The next evening, the city lord, Zhuo Tiansheng, and Elder Yu stood in the main hall, seemingly waiting for something nervously. Whoosh! After a while, a black figure appeared. This person was a burly man about 2 meters tall. His upper body was bare and his muscles were like dragons. He was full of strength. Greetings, Lord Envoy. The three of them bowed. The burly man nodded, sitting on the chair above, looking down at the three of them, and said expressionlessly, Tell me, what's going on? It's a long story. Zhuo Tiansheng spoke. The burly man glanced at Zhuo Tiansheng, his eyes slightly cold, and said, I have time, tell me slowly. Okay. Zhuo Tiansheng hurriedly nodded. That submissive attitude showed that the burly man's identity was not simple. It's like this. Last night, we used the spirit-severing powder to kill Qin Feiyang and Madman Mo. The plan was also very successful. But what we never expected was that they actually had the antidote for the spirit-severing powder. Zhuo Tiansheng said, Even if they have the antidote, can they escape from the hands of you 3 Dominator Realm experts? If that's all you have, then there's no point in keeping you. The burly man's eyes flashed with killing intent. Lord Envoy, please spare us. This is all my fault. Originally, we wanted to use force to kill them, but at that moment, my unfilial daughter, Zhuo Xiaoxian, took advantage of our carelessness and saved them. Zhuo Tiansheng hurriedly said. What? The burly man suddenly stood up, and a murderous aura enveloped Zhuo Tiansheng. Lord Envoy, please calm down. This is not old Zhuo's fault. He's also very angry. Moreover, early in the morning, he announced to the public that he has severed his relationship with his daughter and even issued an arrest warrant for them. Old Zhuo's loyalty to our Rogue Cultivator Alliance is absolutely not a problem. Lord Envoy, please investigate. The city lord hurriedly cupped his hands. The burly man glanced at the city lord, then looked gloomily at Zhuo Tiansheng and asked, Why did your daughter save them? I dare not hide it from you, Lord. Some time ago, Madman Mo kidnapped my daughter, but I didn't expect them to develop feelings for each other. I'm really heartbroken. Lord, it's my fault for disciplining her. If you really want to punish me, I'm willing to accept it. Zhuo Tiansheng knelt on the ground, his face full of pain and self-blame. The burly man was silent for a while, then returned to his seat and said, You are indeed responsible for this matter, but seeing that you are loyal to the Rogue Cultivator Alliance, I will not pursue this matter this time. Thank you for not killing me, Lord. Zhuo Tiansheng hurriedly thanked him. The city lord and elder, you looked at each other, a hint of a smile in their eyes. Get up, the burly man said. Zhuo Tiansheng slowly got up. That pained look on his face could really make him an award-winning actor. The burly man looked at the 3 of them and said, I'm here on the orders of the Vice Alliance leader to personally deal with this matter. You must cooperate. Of course, of course. The 3 of them nodded. All right then. Immediately send orders to all the city lords of the major cities to stop what they are doing and focus on tracking Qin Feiyang and Madman Mo's whereabouts. If there is any news about them, immediately report to me. Also, increase the reward. If the information reported is true, the reward will be a low-grade, heaven-defying divine artifact. If the heads of these 2 are chopped off, the reward will be a pinnacle, heaven-defying divine artifact. The burly man said, Pinnacle, heaven-defying divine artifact. The city lord and the other 2 were shocked. That was a terrifying divine artifact equivalent to a greater mastery ruler. Elder Yu bowed and said, Lord Envoy, if I may ask, who exactly are Qin Feiyang and Madman Mo? I don't know either, but this is the Vice Alliance leader's order. Don't say too much, just do as you're told. The burly man waved his hand. Yes, the 3 of them respectfully replied, then turned and left the hall. After the city lord closed the doors of the hall, his brows immediately furrowed. Elder Yu transmitted his voice. Lord, why do I feel that this matter is not as simple as it seems? Yes, they actually offered a pinnacle heaven-defying divine artifact as a reward. This has never happened before in our Rogue Cultivator Alliance. Zhuo Tiansheng also secretly said, Then let's go ask Qin Feiyang and Little Madman. The Vice Alliance leader wouldn't do this without a reason. I'm guessing that it should be related to their origins. The city lord transmitted his voice. Then, is it good or bad for Xian to follow them? Zhuo Tianqing frowned, and a trace of worry crept into his eyes. You've already severed your father-daughter relationship and even issued a bounty. Is this still important? The most important thing right now is to quickly make arrangements. After all, even if it's just a show, it has to look like it. As for Xian, let's just silently pray for her. The city lord smiled faintly. Sigh, letting Xian go with that little madman just like that, I really don't feel good. Zhuo Tianqing was extremely angry. Then what can you do? Things have already developed to this point. Just be more open-minded. As long as they're happy, it's fine. Besides, it's not like you won't be able to see them in the future. If you really want to see Xian, find a secluded place and send them a message. Anyway, just be careful and don't be discovered." The city lord laughed secretly. Zhuo Tiancheng smiled bitterly. To see his daughter, he actually had to be sneaky. "Sigh, what kind of world is this? All right, quickly go and make arrangements. Also, only the three of us know about this matter. Be sure to keep your mouth shut and don't leak it out." The city lord secretly warned. The two of them nodded, turned around, and quickly left. Chapter 3054. Half a month passed in the blink of an eye. Another 15,000 years passed in the Black Tortoise realm. "Xiaoxian, what are you thinking about?" The mermaid princess came out with a basket of vegetables. She saw Zhuo Xiaoxian sitting in the courtyard absent-mindedly and asked with a smile. Zhuo Xiaoxian's cultivation was not strong. Thus, she did not need much time to repair her soul and body. However, Lunatic was different. He was still in seclusion to reconstruct his body. "Sister-in-law." Zhuo Xiaoxian collected her thoughts. She stood up and smiled sweetly at the mermaid princess. "Are you thinking about your family?" The mermaid princess sat beside Zhuo Xiaoxian and asked while picking vegetables. I'm thinking about my father and foster father. I wonder how they are doing now. I want to ask them why they are doing this to me." Zhuo Xiaoxian lowered her head. She looked a little disappointed. "Didn't I tell you that this is a test for you and senior brother Lunatic?" The mermaid princess smiled. No one told Zhuo Xiaoxian the truth. If Zhuo Xiaoxian knew that her foster father, who had doted on her since she was young, almost killed her, she would be heartbroken. "Even if it's a test, why can't I go home now that we've passed the test? They even said that I'm not allowed to go back. Isn't that the same as not acknowledging me as his daughter? I even sent a message to my father, but he ignored me." Zhuo Xiaoxian felt wronged. "I think they have their own difficulties. You don't have to worry. Once Fei Yang and senior brother Lunatic come out of seclusion, they will investigate this matter. Just stay here peacefully and take care of your body. When the time comes, you can give birth to a fat child for senior brother Crazy." The mermaid princess smiled faintly. Zhuo Xiaoxian blushed upon hearing this. She said, "Sister-in-law, why are you making fun of me too?" "Am I? I don't think so." The mermaid princess said. Zhuo Xiaoxian lowered her head and said, "You and Qindage aren't in a hurry. Why should we?" The mermaid princess said with a smile, "We made a promise a long time ago. We won't have a kid first." "Why?" Zhuo Xiaoxian looked at the mermaid princess suspiciously. "Because you, Qindage, are a busy man and have no time to take care of him." The mermaid princess smiled. "Busy?" Zhuo Xiaoxian was startled. She glanced at the castle and said, "I don't think he's that busy." "There are many things that you don't know, so you don't understand. You'll slowly understand in the future. Help me pick the vegetables. I'll make you a few delicious dishes later." The mermaid princess smiled. "All right." Zhuo Xiaoxian nodded. The two women sat together as if they were a family. They chatted and laughed, and the atmosphere was harmonious. That was the atmosphere that Zhuo Xiaoxian liked. Outside, days passed. The burly man in the city, Lord's mansion, was getting more and more depressed by the day. Almost everyone in the city, Lord's mansion, was busy all day long. Zhuo Tiancheng was the same, running all over the place every day. However, they still couldn't find the whereabouts of Qin Feiyang and the other two. There was no news from the other cities either. Could it be that the three of them had disappeared into thin air? Or had they left the eastern continent? He waited patiently. 1 year, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years for an expert at his level, not to mention a few years, even a few thousand years or tens of thousands of years was just a blink of an eye. However, he could wait. The Deputy Alliance Master seemed to be impatient. On this day, he received a message from the Deputy Alliance Master. The Deputy Alliance Master was stern and ordered him to find them as soon as possible. He had no choice but to urge the city lord and Zhuo Tianxing. The two of them also looked helpless. If this person was determined to hide, how could they find him? There was no way to find him, unless they turned the eastern continent upside down. However, the Itinerant Cultivators Alliance didn't have that ability. After all, the Demon Hall was the real overlord of the eastern continent. For example, they had no right to search the Demon Hall's territory, such as the Demon Tower. Besides, it was possible that the other party had left the eastern continent. Therefore, they could only wait for them to show up. The burly man was a little frustrated. He didn't care, but the Deputy Alliance Master was anxious. So, he personally took action and led people to search everywhere, or set up a trap to lure Qin Feiyang and the rest to show up. However, all his hard work was in vain in the end. He had no choice but to wait quietly in the end. As for the Deputy Alliance Master's urging, there was nothing he could do. If he couldn't find them, he couldn't find them. He couldn't possibly pull them out of thin air. The Demon Hall. Haha, this is really interesting. Chu Yun sat in a hall, her bell-like laughter echoing nonstop. The Hall Master of the Demon Hall also pursed his lips into a smile. Can you stop laughing? Elder Hu stood opposite Chu Yun, looking at Chu Yun and the Demon Hall Master speechlessly. It's funny to begin with. Look at these two brats. Not only did they cause chaos in the Itinerant Cultivators Alliance, but they also kidnapped Zhuo Tianqing's daughter. I've heard enough about this Zhuo Shaoxian. Not only is she very beautiful, but she's also very sensible. She's Zhuo Tianqing's sweetheart. How can Zhuo Tianqing bear to do that? Chu Yun laughed so hard that her chest heaved up and down. Elder Hu could not help but laugh. He said, I have to admit that these two brats are indeed quite capable. The Demon Hall Master asked, You've been following them for so long. How much do you know about them? This Qin Feiyang is calm and composed. He's a very good young man. However, he's a little shrewd. I feel like he's an old fox. As for this little lunatic, although he's a little eccentric, his character is really good. He's righteous and hates evil. Elder Hu's face was full of praise. The Demon Hall Master smiled and said, There aren't many people in this world who can be praised by you like this. To be honest, I didn't take this little lunatic seriously in the past. I thought he was just a foil. However, when I observed him along the way, I realized that, in terms of talent, he's actually not inferior to Qin Feiyang. Elder Hu said, Is Qin Feiyang very talented? Chu Yun asked. Haven't you seen him before? Elder Hu said with a smile. It's true that I've seen him before. However, all I know is his divine art and his sovereign divine weapon are very powerful. As for his personal talent, it's really hard to say. Chu Yun shook her head. Little Yun, what you said is true. No matter how strong an external object is, it's still an external object. What we need to see is their potential, especially the power of law. If you can't comprehend the power of law, no matter how talented you are, you can only stop at the imperishable realm. People at the imperishable realm are useless in our sky cloud realm. The Demon Hall Master said, I didn't see the power of law. Elder Hu shook his head. Isn't that right? Without the power of law, what's so rare about it? Chu Yin smiled disdainfully. Perhaps they have the power of law, but they haven't used it in front of others? Elder Hu said. The Demon Hall Master smiled and said, Then let's see if these two are the talents we need. What if they aren't? Chu Yun asked. If they aren't, then it's a bit of a waste for the sovereign divine weapon to be in their hands. The Demon Hall Master smiled faintly. Chu Yin and Elder Hu looked at each other. Naturally, they understood what the Demon Hall Master meant. The demon hall master pondered for a while before looking at the two of them and said, "There's one more thing we have to investigate." "What is it?" The two of them were suspicious. "Why does the vice leader of the Rogue Cultivator Alliance want to kill them so badly? Does he know something?" The demon hall master's eyes flashed. "That's impossible. Only the three of us and the Blood Hall know that Qin Feiyang and the others came from the lower realm. But we didn't tell anyone, and the Blood Hall didn't announce it either. Even the sea beasts in the Sky Cloud realm are forbidden from mentioning Qin Feiyang and the others. So the Rogue Cultivator Alliance doesn't know about it at all." Chu Yun frowned. "Then the problem is even bigger. Qin Feiyang and the others just came to the Sky Cloud realm. They haven't even seen the vice leader. Why did he order them to be killed?" The demon hall master said, "Didn't I say that they want to kill one to warn the others?" Chu Yun said, "You really believe it?" "If they want to kill one to warn the others, is there a need to send someone to supervise them personally? There's a big problem here. And that Yun Ziang, he actually has the protection of a perfected sovereign's killing intent. We have to figure this out." The demon hall master said. Chu Yun immediately looked at Elder Hua and asked, "You know all the perfected sovereigns in the Sky Cloud realm. Didn't you recognize the aura of that killing intent?" "No. The aura of this killing intent is very unfamiliar. I guess that this person is either deliberately concealing his aura, or he's an expert we've never seen before." Elder Hua shook his head. "Then I'd rather believe the former." Chu Yun shook her head. "How could an expert they've never seen before be possible? As the overlord of the Eastern continent, who didn't know the experts of the 4 continents in the Sky Cloud realm? Not to mention that it was a supreme existence at the perfected sovereign realm. But who is it that deliberately concealed his aura? Blood Hall? But if he was really from the Blood Hall, why did he hold back from attacking Qin Feiyang? It seems that our eastern continent is really lively." Chu Yun's eyes flashed with coldness. In the blink of an eye, outside 50 years had passed. Boom! On this day, inside the ancient castle, a terrifying aura suddenly burst out. The owner of this aura was Qin Feiyang. That's right. After 50 years of seclusion, Qin Feiyang finally stepped into the initial imperishable realm. 50 years outside was 1,000 years in the Black Tortoise realm. How long had it been? Even Qin Feiyang himself didn't know how many soul stones he had refined over the years. It was difficult to calculate now. However, when he broke through to the half-step imperishable realm, it took him almost 10 years. Now, it took him 50 years to break through to the initial imperishable realm, which was almost 3 times. Naturally, the soul stones he refined are more. Not bad. When Qin Feiyang walked out of the ancient castle, the little boy appeared out of thin air. Qin Feiyang smiled slightly, and then looked at the little boy strangely. "What?" The little boy raised his eyebrows. "I'm curious. When I first saw you, you were only this big. Now that so many years have passed, you're still this big? You can't even grow up." Qin Feiyang was suspicious. Chapter 3055. Don't worry about it. The little brat rolled his eyes and looked at Qin Feiyang expressionlessly and said, "I'm here to inform you that the axe and the sunset bow, these heaven-defying divine artifact, have already evolved to the peak level." Peak level? Qin Feiyang was stunned. "Yes." The little brat nodded and said, "The blood demon tower and the dragon-slaying sword, the 4 heaven-defying divine artifact, have also evolved to the intermediate heaven-defying divine artifact." Sure. Qin Feiyang was overjoyed. The intermediate heaven-defying divine artifact was equivalent to the initial Dominator realm. The peak level heaven-defying divine artifact was even more terrifying, equivalent to the Dominator realm. In other words, even if he faced Shuo Tianqing now, he would not be afraid at all. One last thing, I still need to continue robbing the spirit vein and crystal vein outside. The little brat said, "Cough, cough. Don't make it sound so bad." Qin Feiyong coughed dryly and laughed. Robbing is robbing. What else can you say? Robbing the rich to help the poor? The little brat rolled his eyes at Qin Feiyong and then disappeared without a trace. Qin Feiyong smiled helplessly, closed his eyes, and extended his perception. Soon, a trace of bewilderment crept up in his eyes. Gradually, this bewilderment turned into surprise. He didn't expect that Black Tortoise Realm had unknowingly grown so much. The current Black Tortoise Realm was almost the size of half of the Divine Continent. The Divine Continent was divided into the East, West, South, North, and Divine Dragon Island. In other words, the current Black Tortoise Realm was comparable to the North, South, and half of Divine Dragon Island. No wonder that little brat told him to rob some more spirit vein and crystal vein. The Black Tortoise Realm had grown so much, so the energy of the crystal vein and spirit vein would naturally be distributed by these new places. The original places would naturally become weaker than before. Crystal vein, spirit vein, there was no hurry. After all, there were many in the Sky Cloud Realm. Qin Feiyong returned home. He hadn't seen his beloved woman for so many years. Naturally, he was burning with passion. After a while, the mermaid princess nestled in Qin Feiyong's arms with a flushed face and said, "Seen your brother? Crazy hasn't come out yet." It took him a lot of time to reconstruct his divine soul and body. He might need more time to break through. Qin Feiyong smiled. Then go and investigate what difficulties Zhuo Tianqing and the others have. All these years, I've sent him messages every now and then, but he never responded. The mermaid princess said. No response. Qin Feiyong was taken aback. Yes. The mermaid princess nodded and said worriedly, "I'm thinking, did something happen to Zhuo Tianqing?" This is indeed strange. Zhuo Tianqing loves Zhuo Shaoxian so much. There's no way he would ignore her. Okay, I'll go out and take a look later. Qin Feiyong nodded and then pressed the mermaid princess down. He chuckled and said, "Continue." After a while, Qin Feiyong finally walked out of the house with satisfaction. He stood in the yard and sensed the aura around him. Qin Batian and Lu Jingyang's aura were still at the great perfection, imperishable stage. After all, they were mainly comprehending the power of laws now. People like Fire Lotus, Qin Rushuang, White-Eyed Wolf, Wang Ming, Yang Li, Zhao Tailai, Blood Kirin, and Tang Hai had mostly broken through to the initial imperishable stage, because they were basically cultivating in seclusion. Their speed was naturally faster than Qin Feiyong. Only people like Wang Xiaojie, Long Tianyu, Big Black Wolf, and Qin Chen were still lacking in cultivation. Big Black Wolf and Black Panther had no time to cultivate because they were managing the affairs of the Black Tortoise Realm. Wang Xiaojie and the others naturally entered the Black Tortoise Realm later. In comparison, Wang Xiaojie was not as good as Long Tianyu and Qin Chen, because Long Tianyu and Qin Chen had entered the Black Tortoise Realm earlier than Wang Xiaojie. However, the three of them had all opened the door of potential. Coupled with endless resources, they would catch up sooner or later. After all, the later realms required more time than the previous. Just like now, the time Qin Feiyong took to break through a small realm was enough for Wang Xiaojie and the others to break through several realms. Suddenly, he looked at Madman's yard. Madman was in seclusion in the castle like him, so only Zhuo Shaoxian lived in the yard. But now he did not sense Zhuo Shaoxian's aura. Qin Feiyong released his perception and did not find her in the Devil's Land. Then he extended his perception to Zhongzhou and the 4 major regions. Zhongzhou, which had been empty, was now almost occupied by the beasts of the Black Tortoise Realm. The strongest ferocious beasts were all at the great perfection 9th Heaven Realm. A moment later, he finally found Zhuo Shaoxian in a city in the southern region. He saw Zhuo Shaoxian walking alone on the crowded street, looking around with curiosity in her eyes. Whoosh! Qin Feiyang took a step forward and appeared in front of Zhuo Shaoxian. Zhuo Shaoxian was startled. She was about to greet him. Look, it's the ruler. The people on the street became restless. It's really the ruler in person. Greetings, ruler. At that instant, everyone on the street bowed and greeted him. Ugh! Zhuo Shaoxian stared at the scene in astonishment. I didn't expect everyone to still remember me after so many years. Qin Feiyang wore a faint smile. How could we forget? Look over there, one of the old men pointed at the center of the city. Qin Feiyang raised his head and immediately saw a stone statue over 10 meters tall at the center of the city. The owner of the stone statue was none other than him. Even though it's been a long time since the battle with the dragons, as long as your statue is still here, we will never forget you. Even your descendants see you as their idol. Everyone spoke one after another. It was a great honor to be able to see the ruler in person. They could brag about it for the rest of their lives. Qin Feiyang shook his head and chuckled. What a bunch of adorable people. All right then, you can continue with your business. With that, Qin Feiyang waved his hand and brought Zhuo Shaoxian to a deserted mountain peak. I really didn't expect you to not be from the Sky Cloud realm. Shaoxian looked at Qin Feiyang's side profile. There seemed to be a hint of fear in her eyes. So you already know. Qin Feiyang smiled faintly. I've been traveling all over the Black Tortoise realm. I've heard about your deeds everywhere. It's hard for me not to know. Zhuo Shaoxian said. Yes, the Black Tortoise realm isn't some kind of spatial, godly object. It's an independent world, and I'm the ruler of this world. Qin Feiyang nodded. The fear in Zhuo Shaoxian's eyes grew thicker after Qin Feiyang admitted it himself. You don't have to be afraid of me just because you know these things. I'm still your Qin Dage. You're still a part of the Devil's Land. Qin Feiyang turned to look at Zhuo Shaoxian and said with a smile. Zhuo Shaoxian looked at Qin Feiyang. Looking at that gentle smile, the fear in her heart disappeared. She giggled and very naturally hooked her arm around Qin Feiyang's arm, as if they were siblings. She said, Big brother Qin, you really scared me, you know? Are you that timid? Qin Feiyang said with a smile. Are you kidding? This isn't a continent. It's a complete world. How scary is that? The most shocking thing is that you're not from the Sky Cloud realm. Qin Dage, I heard from the people of the Black Tortoise realm that you're from a place called Great Qin. Is Great Qin fun? Zhuo Shaoxian asked with a yearning look. Fun? Qin Feiyang shook his head and laughed. He nodded and said, It's quite fun. I'll take you there when I have the chance. Okay. Zhuo Shaoxian nodded and then said, Then why did you come to the Sky Cloud realm? Apart from the Sky Cloud realm, how many other continents like Great Qin are there? There are quite a few places like Great Qin, but they can't compare to the Sky Cloud realm. As for why we came to the Sky Cloud realm, of course, it's because the Sky Cloud realm is big enough. It's only interesting to come here and explore. Qin Feiyang smiled slightly. You're not telling the truth, right? Once, when I was chatting with sister-in-law, she vaguely mentioned that you seemed to be here to save someone. But when I asked her who it was, she fell silent. She even looked depressed. Is the person you want to save related to sister-in-law? Zhuo Shaoxian was like a curious child. Don't ask me about this. If you want to ask your sister-in-law. If she doesn't say, I don't dare to say. Qin Feiyang smiled. I didn't expect that Qin Dage is also a henpecked husband. Zhuo Shaoxian looked at Qin Feiyang in surprise, as if she had discovered a new continent. Cough, cough. Qin Feiyang coughed dryly. How did he become a henpecked husband? That, I still have something to deal with. You go back to the Devil's Land and stay there. Don't run around. Everyone doesn't know about your relationship with me. What if you meet a bad person? Also, you must not tell anyone about the situation in the Black Tortoise realm. Not even your father and adoptive father. Qin Feiyang warned. Don't worry about this. I still know the principle that a man's wealth is his own ruin. I will definitely keep it a secret for you. Zhuo Shaoxian giggled. Qin Feiyang smiled and sent Zhuo Shaoxian to the Devil's Land. Don't say. She was really a sensible and obedient girl. No wonder even the city lord liked her so much. Windsea City. Even after 50 years, the arrest warrant was still there. The city gate was strictly guarded. In addition to that, there was an invisible barrier above the city. The barrier was constructed by the city lord himself. It was to prevent anyone from using the teleportation altar to teleport into the city. Apart from the Windsea City, all the cities in the eastern continent were basically the same. In other words, to enter and leave the cities, one would have to pass through the city gates. If you dare to force your way in, I'm sorry, but someone would immediately appear to kill you. South City Gate. A young man in a white shirt stood at the city gate and stared at the arrest warrant on the city wall with a frown. The young man in a white shirt was surrounded by many people, but it was as if he was transparent. No one could see him. That's right. The man was Qin Feiyang. At that moment, he had activated the concealment technique. Thus, no one was aware of his existence. Reading the content of the arrest warrant, Qin Feiyang's face was filled with astonishment. What exactly was going on? Zhuo Tianqing had severed their relationship as father and daughter, and even put an arrest warrant on Zhuo Shaoxian? It was not a big deal to put him and the madman on the wanted list, but it was too strange to put Zhuo Shaoxian on the wanted list. What was the reason behind this? That Zhuo Tianqing had no choice but to do this. Chapter 3056. Qin Feiyang withdrew his gaze and glanced at the guards at the entrance of the city. In the end, he stepped forward and entered the city silently, heading straight for the city lord's mansion. It was necessary to investigate this matter. The duration of the concealment technique was limited. Thus he had to pick up his pace. A moment later, he appeared at the entrance of the city lord's mansion. The security of the city lord's mansion was tighter than before, but it did not affect Qin Feiyang at all. He went straight into the city lord's mansion as if there was no one there. Soon, he encountered two young men. The two young men were wearing luxurious clothes. Their faces were filled with arrogance as they walked toward him side by side. Third brother, what do you think is going on? Zhuo Shaoxian has been expelled from the clan, and we don't even know if she's dead or alive. Why is father still treating us the same as before? One of the young men frowned. I'm wondering the same thing. You're talking about the past, when that bitch Zhuo Shaoxian was still around. Father only doted on her and ignored us. It was still reasonable. But now, they have severed their relationship as father and daughter. Are we really that unimportant in father's eyes? The other young man was not in a good mood either. It seems like our situation hasn't changed much even after Zhuo Shaoxian left. And I heard that Big Brother has been going to the ancestral land every few days. I wonder what he's going to do. Do you even need to think about it? The elders of the Zhuo clan are all living in seclusion in the ancestral land. He must be going there to curry favor with them, because once he gets the approval of the elders, he will be the next patriarch of the Zhuo clan and will inherit the position of the vice city lord. Let me tell you, this big brother of ours is very shrewd. Forget it. Let's not talk about these unhappy things. Let's go to the Purple Smoke Tower and have some fun. I heard that a lot of beautiful ladies have come recently. Really? Why don't we go and take a look? The two of them laughed mischievously as they walked past Qin Feiyang and headed towards the main gate of the city lord's mansion. Qin Feiyang's eyes flickered as he looked at their backs. These two men must be one of Zhuo Shaoxian's half-brothers. Not only were they not concerned about Zhuo Xiaoxian being wanted, they were even gloating over her misfortune. It seemed like Zhuo Xiaoxian's situation in the Zhuo clan was not very good. Another moment passed. Qin Feiyang encountered 2 more guards. I really don't know who the lord of the Fenghua Palace is. Even the 2 city lords have to obey him. That's right. Judging from his cultivation, he should be around the same level as the city lord. However, when he looks at the burly man, it's as if he's looking at his ancestor. The 2 guards whispered to each other as they walked over and passed by Qin Feiyang. Qin Feiyang was stunned. An existence that even the city lord and Zhuo Tiancheng had to obey had come to the city lord's mansion? The Fenghua Palace. Qin Feiyang's eyes twinkled as he sent a voice transmission. Xiao Xian, where is the Fenghua Palace? Ah, Qin Dage, are you in the city lord's mansion now? Zhuo Xiaoxian's voice sounded with a hint of surprise. Qin Feiyang said to himself, don't ask so many questions. Just tell me. All right. Zhuo Xiaoxian told Qin Feiyang the exact location of the Fenghua Palace. Immediately, Qin Feiyang stealthily made his way to the Fenghua Palace. About 100 breaths later, a magnificent palace entered Qin Feiyang's line of sight. The doors of the palace were ajar, and there was not a single guard around. However, he could clearly sense 3 auras inside the palace. 2 of them were the city lord and Zhuo Tianxing. The other aura was very unfamiliar. Qin Feiyang walked to the doors and looked inside. He saw the burly man sitting on a chair above. The city lord and Zhuo Tianxing stood below him respectfully. The burly man glared at the 2 of them and shouted, It's been 50 years and you still haven't found anything. What are you doing? Lord Messenger, there's nothing we can do. The Eastern continent is so big. If they're determined to hide, it'll be like looking for a needle in a haystack. Zhuo Tianxing shook his head and sighed. That's enough. Stop complaining. I don't mind. However, the Deputy Alliance leader keeps urging me. You know the Deputy Alliance leader's temper. If we still can't find Qin Feiyang and the others, I'm afraid we'll all be in trouble. The burly man sighed. The city lord and Zhuo Tianxing remained silent. The burly man looked at Zhuo Tianxing and continued, especially you. Qin Feiyang and the others only ran away because of your daughter. Although you've already severed your father-daughter relationship, if you truly anger the Vice Alliance Master, there's no need for me to tell you the consequences. Zhuo Tianxing shuddered and hurriedly said, Lord Messenger, I'm loyal to the Itinerant Cultivator Alliance. Don't tell me that. You should tell the Deputy Alliance leader. The burly man shook his head. Zhuo Tianxing looked worried. The city lord comforted him. Old Zhuo, you don't have to be too nervous. The Deputy Alliance leader is a reasonable person. After explaining the situation, he'll probably punish you at most. Wrong, the burly man said. The 2 looked at the burly man. To tell you the truth, the Deputy Alliance leader is very concerned about Qin Feiyang and the others. I've never seen him want to kill someone so much. Therefore, if this matter is really investigated, Zhuo Tianxing, you'll definitely die. The burly man said in a deep voice. Zhuo Tianxing's pupils shrank, full of horror. Buzz. At this moment, the burly man's divine sound transmission stone sounded. The burly man took it out and his face suddenly changed. He looked at the city lord and Zhuo Tianxing and said, It's the Deputy Alliance leader. The 2 shuddered. The burly man took a deep breath and activated the divine sound transmission stone. The image of the green-robed old man immediately emerged. Greetings, Deputy Alliance leader. The 3 of them immediately bowed, respectfully. How's the progress? The green-robed old man asked. Sir, there's no progress. It's as if the 2 of them disappeared from the world. We even suspect that they've left the Eastern continent, the burly man said respectfully. Humph. What a bunch of trash! The green-robed old man immediately snorted. The three shuddered and hurriedly knelt on the ground, saying, "Please forgive us, sir." "Zhuo I'll give you another 50 years. If you can't find them, your Zhuo family will be exterminated," the green-robed old man said. His hoarse voice was filled with coldness and ruthlessness. "Sir, please forgive us." Zhuo Tianqing's face suddenly turned pale. "Sir, if Qin Feiyang and the others really left the eastern continent, then even if you kill Zhuo Tianqing, it'll be useless." The city lord glanced at Zhuo Tianqing and said respectfully to the green-robed old man, "You still dare to plead for him? You don't know about this, but you can't absolve yourself from the blame." The green-robed old man shouted, "I'm sorry." The city lord hurriedly knelt on the ground. The green-robed old man glanced at the two of them and said in a deep voice, "In short, you only have 50 years. Take care of yourselves." After saying that, the illusory figure disappeared. Zhuo Tiansheng raised his head and looked at the city lord and the burly man. He said helplessly, "What should I do?" "What else can you do? Of course you have to hurry up and find them." The burly man shook his head. Vice Alliance leader Qin Feiyang's eyes flickered. He turned around and left quietly. It turned out that the Vice Alliance leader of the Rogue Cultivator Alliance wanted to kill him. It was no wonder that Zhuo Tianqing would make such a choice. On one hand, it was the Vice Alliance leader's order. On the other hand, it was his beloved daughter. He could only choose to sever their father-daughter relationship and protect the Zhuo family. However, he did not expect that even if he severed their father-daughter relationship, he would not be able to escape this disaster. After leaving Windsea City, Qin Feiyang returned to the Black Tortoise Realm and told the Mermaid Princess about this. The Mermaid Princess heard this and sighed. "Don't tell Zhuo Xiaoxian about this for now," Qin Feiyang reminded her. "I know." The Mermaid Princess nodded and sighed. "But we can't let Zhuo Tianqing bear this pressure alone." Qin Feiyang pondered for a while and said, "Let's wait for Senior Brother Madman to come out of seclusion and see what he wants. Anyway, there's still 50 years. There's no hurry." Next, Qin Feiyang began to comprehend the power of laws. He had already comprehended the first profound divine ability of the light law. So now he was comprehending the lightning law and the karma law, especially the karma law. The karma law was one of the strongest laws in the world, so he had to be more focused. Time passed quietly. Outside, 5 years had passed. Boom! On this day, another shocking divine might erupted from the ancient castle. Zhuo Xiaoxian ran out of the courtyard immediately. Her eyes were filled with joy as she looked at the ancient castle, because the owner of this divine might was Madman. Swoosh! Soon, Madman took a step out of the ancient castle and withdrew his aura. Little Madman! Zhuo Xiaoxian immediately ran up and burrowed into Madman's arms. Looking at the woman in his arms, a hint of tenderness flashed across Madman's eyes. Then he laughed and said, "How long has it been? And you're already thinking of me." "Who's thinking of you?" Zhuo Xiaoxian rolled her eyes, but she had no intention of getting out of Madman's arms. Her red cheeks were filled with a happy smile. Looking at that red face, Madman couldn't help but feel restless. "You're out of seclusion." The Mermaid Princess walked out at this time. Madman nodded and asked, "Where's old Qin?" "He's comprehending the power of laws." The Mermaid Princess smiled slightly. "You're really hardworking, but no matter how hard you work, you won't be able to catch up to me." Madman smiled proudly. His law of slaughter had already comprehended the second profound divine ability. If he worked harder, the third profound divine ability would be out soon. "Is that so?" Suddenly, Qin Feiyang's voice sounded in the attic. Following that, a bolt of lightning shot into the sky. That bolt of lightning was Qin Feiyang. At this moment, he was wearing a purple gold battle armor that seemed to be made of divine lightning, emitting a dazzling divine light. And in his hand there was a translucent divine sword that was extremely sharp. Madman raised his head and looked at Qin Feiyang. When he saw the battle armor and divine sword, he was stunned and asked, "Is this the profound divine ability of the law of thunder and the law of karma?" "Come and try." Qin Feiyang didn't answer and looked at him provocatively. "Fine, I'll try. You think I'm afraid of you?" Madman smiled coldly and gently pushed Zhuo Shaoxian away. With a clang, the sword of slaughter appeared. Following that, he took a step into the sky and slashed at Qin Feiyang. Chapter 3057 Sword of Slaughter. As the first profound ability of the law of slaughter, its power was naturally terrifying. But Qin Feiyang didn't retreat at all. He waved the divine sword in his hand and slashed at the sword of slaughter. In an instant, the two collided with each other. Like real divine weapons, blinding sparks flew from the collision. Crack! At the same time, an ear-piercing, shattering sound rang out. The madman was stunned. He looked at the sword of slaughter in his hand and found that there was a small crack on the blade. "How is it?" Qin Feiyang smiled proudly. "That's impossible." The madman frowned. He looked at the divine sword in Qin Feiyang's hand and asked suspiciously, "What is this thing?" Qin Feiyang smiled and said, "The first profound ability of the law of karma, sword of karma." "So it's the law of karma," the madman muttered. He had long heard that the law of karma was one of the strongest laws in the world, and its power surpassed other laws. He didn't believe it before, but he didn't expect it to be true. They were both first profound abilities, but the law of slaughter was no match for it. Again, Qin Feiyang took the initiative to attack the madman. "Kid, don't be so smug." The madman laughed cruelly. Wielding his sword of slaughter, he began to fight with Qin Feiyang. The two's speed was pushed to the limit. Zhuo Shaoxian couldn't see their figures at all. She could only hear the loud sounds of each collision. Crack! About a few hundred breaths later, accompanied by a crisp sound, the sword of slaughter in the madman's hand finally shattered. But the divine sword in Qin Feiyang's hand was intact. "I can't accept it. They are both law of karma. How can the difference be so big?" The madman was furious. While Qin Feiyang wasn't paying attention, he used an auxiliary technique and rushed behind Qin Feiyang. Boom! Following closely, he punched Qin Feiyang's back. However, Qin Feiyang was wearing armor. When the madman's punch landed on the armor, Qin Feiyang didn't seem to feel anything at all. He didn't even move. "What the hell is this?" Madman looked at the armor in shock. Qin Feiyang turned around to look at Madman and proudly said, "The first profound divine ability of the law of thunder, thunder armor." He has already comprehended 2 profound divine abilities? That's too fast. Madman's mouth twitched. "This is fast? I've been in seclusion for 5 years. Think about it. 5 years in the outside world. How many years would that be in the black tortoise world?" Qin Feiyang was speechless. Madman paused for a moment before gritting his teeth. "That's true. How is it? Do you admit defeat?" Qin Feiyang grinned. "Despicable. Watch my sword." The madman's face was filled with disdain. With a clang, another blood-red sword appeared. "You cheated," Qin Feiyang said angrily. This was not the first profound divine ability, the sword of slaughter. It was the second profound divine ability, the sword of slaughter. "You didn't say that I can't use the second profound divine ability." "Brat, wake up." Madman laughed and slashed at Qin Feiyang. Qin Feiyang quickly waved the karma sword to meet it. With a loud clang, the karma sword broke on the spot. Immediately after, the sword of slaughter landed on Qin Feiyang's body and the terrifying sharpness instantly tore through the thunder armor. But at this moment, the sword of slaughter stopped. Madman looked at Qin Feiyang proudly and said, "Brat, do you admit defeat?" Scram! Qin Feiyang raised his hand and slapped the sword of slaughter away. "You have the nerve to be proud after activating the second profound divine ability? You don't admit defeat?" Again, Madman clamored. He didn't know how to write the word shameless. Qin Feiyang rolled his eyes. No matter how strong the karma law was, it couldn't be compared to the second profound divine ability of the law of slaughter. In other words, for example, the karma law, the space-time law, the time law, these strongest laws were at most invincible among the same level. It was still impossible for him to jump ranks. But even so, it was still very terrifying, because there were only a few stages in total. To be able to sweep through the same stage was already very impressive. Qin Feiyang waved his hand, and the broken karma sword dissipated. Then he said, "Let's talk business." Madman said, "Don't change the topic. We haven't decided the winner yet." Qin Feiyang really wanted to give her a slap. She was still so excited. "I really have something to say." Qin Feiyang looked at Zhuo Shaoxian below and said, "After I broke through to the initial stage of the Undying Realm, I went to Wine Sea City, and the city, Lord's Mansion." Madman was slightly taken aback. He also dispersed the sword of slaughter in his hand and asked, "Is there a situation?" "Yes." Qin Feiyang told Madman everything through the voice transmission. "So that's how it is," Madman muttered. "What I mean is, we can't let Zhuo Tianqing shoulder this pressure alone," Qin Feiyang secretly said. "Definitely not. After all, everything he did was for that silly girl." Madman glanced at Zhuo Shaoxian. If Zhuo Shaoxian knew about this, she would probably cry. "Then what do you think we should do?" Qin Feiyang secretly asked. Madman pondered for a while, then leaned over to Qin Feiyang's ear and whispered a few words. Qin Feiyang was slightly startled and whispered, "Is this okay? After all, they will be your brother-in-law in the future." "Brother-in-law? You're thinking too much." "Those selfish and heartless trash. How can they be worthy of being my brother-in-law?" Madman's face was full of disdain. Qin Feiyang shook his head and laughed, thinking, "All right, since these people usually have the intention to harm Zhuo Shaoxian, we'll take the initiative." "Then let's go now?" Madman asked. "Let's go." Qin Feiyang laughed and lowered his head to look at the mermaid princess. "We have something to do." Without waiting for a response, the two of them disappeared without a trace. "What's the rush?" Zhuo Shaoxian stared at the sky with a blank face. "Let's not bother about men's business." Mermaid Princess smiled. She knew that Qin Feiyang and Madman were going to help Zhuo Tianqing, but she could not tell Zhuo Shaoxian about this. With the concealment technique, Qin Feiyang and Madman easily entered Wind Sea City. When Madman saw the wanted poster, the coldness in his eyes grew stronger as he thought, "Why does the vice leader want to kill us so badly?" "Who knows?" Qin Feiyang shrugged. "Then, have you thought about how we're going to leave the city?" One had to know that there was an invisible barrier in the sky above the Wind Sea City. If their whereabouts were exposed, they would be like turtles in a jar if they couldn't leave Wine Sea City immediately. You don't know, right? The Axe and the Sunset Divine Bow have evolved into pinnacle divine artifacts. Although the City Lord is a perfected dominator, a dozen pinnacle divine artifacts should be able to break this barrier. Qin Feiyang thought, "No way, they've all evolved." Madman was shocked and hurriedly asked, "What about the Blood Demon Tower?" "I heard that kids say that it has evolved into an intermediate divine artifact." Qin Feiyang transmitted. "That's too slow." Madman frowned. "Come on. Do you think it's an ordinary divine artifact?" Qin Feiyang rolled his eyes. It was already shocking that it could evolve into an intermediate divine artifact so quickly. How insatiable. Madman smiled embarrassedly. "Besides, don't we still have our ancestors?" The barrier set up by the city lord can cut off the teleportation altar, but it won't work with the legends of the space-time law. Plus, we still have the demon ancestors, Snowflake, and the space-time gate, so we don't have to worry about escaping. Qin Feiyang smiled. Then it's fine. Madman nodded. While talking, the two entered a secluded alley and changed their appearances before turning off the concealment technique. Purple Smoke Tower. This place was very famous in Wind Sea City. This was because this was a place for people to seek pleasure and make merry. Those who came in and out were mostly from rich families. Here, as long as you had status and wealth, you could get any service. The women here were all very seductive, so the Purple Smoke Tower was greatly sought after by the rich kids of Wind Sea City. When Qin Feiyang and Madman arrived at the Purple Smoke Tower, they saw many seductive women with heavy makeup. This made the two of them feel disgusted. What kind of place is this? Madman frowned. A place to eat, drink, and play. Qin Feiyang smiled faintly and led Madman into the Purple Smoke Tower. Young master! As soon as the two of them entered, two women came up to them with seductive smiles. They were very bold and almost jumped into the two's arms. The decorations inside were very luxurious and lewd. The Purple Smoke Tower had 10 floors in total, but no matter if it was the main hall, the corridors, or the private rooms, there were all kinds of men and women hugging and flirting. The woman hugging Madman rubbed Madman's chest while giggling. Young masters, there are private rooms upstairs. Let's go up and play. Cough, cough. Madman and Qin Feiyang looked at each other with uncomfortable expressions. Although they were very experienced, they had never been to a place like this before. Let's go to the main hall. Give us 2 jugs of wine and a few dishes. Qin Feiyang pushed away the woman in his arms. The pungent smell of rouge made him want to vomit. These women weren't even 1/10,000th of the mermaid princess and Zhuo Shaoxian. No, they weren't even qualified to be compared to them. Boring. When the 2 women heard this, they immediately snorted coldly, twisted their waists, and went to greet the next guest. I can't stand this atmosphere. Madman shook his head and glanced at the people upstairs and downstairs. He said with disdain, "There are so many people who like this place." "You don't like it, but those playboys do." Qin Feiyang smiled. Under the guidance of a waiter, the 2 of them sat in a corner. "Please have a seat. The dishes will be served soon." The waiter was very polite. He greeted them with a smile and ran away. Madman heard the seductive laughter and looked at the lewd men and women. He frowned and said, "Why did you bring me here?" "When I snuck into the city lord's mansion the other day, I met Zhuo Shaoxian's 2 brothers. They seem to come here often. So let's wait here." Qin Feiyang smiled faintly. Soon, the waiter ran over with a few dishes and 2 jugs of wine. He said with a smile, "Please enjoy, young masters." However, after the waiter left, Madman looked at the jug of wine in front of him with a timid expression. "What's wrong?" Qin Feiyang looked at him suspiciously. Chapter 3058. The Madman asked in a low voice, "Do you think there's that spirit-breaking powder in here?" Qin Feiyang looked at the Madman in astonishment. Once bitten by a snake, twice shy. As a restaurant, how could they poison their customers' wine? Besides, now that they had changed their appearances, no one knew that they were the people wanted by the city lord's mansion. Therefore, it was almost impossible to poison them. Wait, the evil force has the ability to devour poison. What am I afraid of? The Madman patted his head and immediately poured a cup of wine and drank it leisurely. Qin Feiyang shook his head and laughed. He also poured a cup and tasted it. He was completely uninterested. "Waiter, I heard that half a month ago a woman came here. Why didn't she come out?" Suddenly, a young man at the next table pulled a waiter who was passing by and asked, "Don't worry, she'll come out later." The waiter smiled. So it's like that. The young man nodded in realization and let go of the waiter. Brother, who is this Meow Meow? The young man's desk mate asked curiously. This Meow Meow, I've only heard of her. I've never seen her before. I heard that she came to the Purple Smoke Tower half a month ago. Because she's too beautiful. She attracted everyone's attention the moment she arrived. Right now, all the rich and powerful disciples in the Wind Sea City are here for her. The young man said with curiosity in his eyes. He didn't know if the rumor was true or false. They're all here for her? Is it that exaggerated? The man at the same table was stunned. The young man said, If you don't believe me, go ask the people at the next table. The man at the same table didn't believe it. He turned to look at a purple-clothed young man and smiled. Brother, are you here for Miss Meow Meow? Of course. The purple-clothed young man held an enchanting woman in his arms and said, without hesitation, Brother, you too. The man at the same table was startled and looked at the young men at the other table. The young men in luxurious clothes nodded, their eyes filled with anticipation. The man at the same table was startled. It was true. How is it? The young man looked at him and smiled. Impressive. Wait a moment. I want to see how beautiful this woman called Meow Meow is. The man at the same table said. Qin Feiyang and Madman also heard the conversation between the two, and a trace of curiosity appeared in their eyes. To be pursued by so many men, her looks must be extraordinary. Please come in, young masters. At this moment, 2 more people walked in. Qin Feiyang glanced at them casually, but just as he was about to withdraw his gaze, he looked at the 2 again and frowned slightly. What is it? Madman was suspicious. See for yourself. Qin Feiyang muttered. Madman looked up and raised his eyebrows. Both of them had handsome looks and extraordinary temperaments. They were about 20 years old, and one of them was an old acquaintance, Yun Ziang. At this moment, Yun Ziang was wearing a white robe. His thin body looked slender, and he held a folding fan in his hand. He looked very elegant. As soon as he entered the restaurant, more than a dozen beautiful women surrounded him, because he was indeed handsome, and his temperament was outstanding. At first glance, he looked like a descendant of a big family. Yun Ziang smiled gently and said, Ladies, I'm sorry, we are just here to drink and chat. What's the point of just drinking and chatting? One of the women hugged Yun Ziang's arm and smiled. Yun Ziang was not angry and said with a smile, Drinking is enough, ladies, please let me go. Another boring person. The group of women immediately pouted and turned to leave. Yun Ziang smiled and looked at his companion next to him and said, Brother, please. That companion was slightly shorter than Yun Ziang, but he looked better than Yun Ziang. His skin was as soft as a woman's, his facial features were exquisite, his eyes were bright, and his teeth were white. He wore a white brocade robe with a white jade belt around his waist. He also held a folding fan in his hand. Why does he look so familiar? Qin Feiyang looked at that person with a trace of suspicion in his eyes, as if he had seen him before. I also feel that he looks familiar, especially his eyes. Madman was also sizing up that person. Eyes? Qin Feiyang was stunned and looked at that person's eyes. His eyelashes were very long, and his dark eyes were without any impurities, like a pure gem. Why did it look like a woman's eyes? And this person's facial features also seemed to be very feminine. Wait. Suddenly, Qin Feiyang looked at that person's throat and found that there was no Adam's apple. Was it really a woman? A man dressed as a woman. Interesting. Madman also saw it and pursed his lips with a playful smile. No, I have indeed seen this pair of eyes before. Qin Feiyang muttered as figures flashed through his mind. Finally, the image stopped on a masked woman. It's him! Qin Feiyang narrowed his eyes slightly. Who? Madman was suspicious. The Tower Master of Delight Pavilion. Qin Feiyong transmitted. Madman took a closer look and found that his eyes were exactly the same as that woman's. Yun Ziang actually brought her to the Purple Smoke Pavilion to play? Is he crazy? Madman said to himself. Is he here for us again? You're delusional. Qin Feiyong was speechless. This person is unfathomable. We have to be careful. Madman transmitted. Qin Feiyong's eyes flickered. Was Yun Ziang intentionally getting close to them? Now he brought that woman all the way from Cloud Sea City to the Purple Smoke Pavilion. What was he planning to do? Yun Ziang and the woman sat in a corner not far away, drinking and chatting. From the beginning until the end, they didn't even glance at Qin Feiyong and Madman. Of course, they wouldn't recognize them even if they saw them. Qin Feiyong and Madman paid attention for a while, but they didn't notice anything strange, so they withdrew their gazes. Time flew by. Noon was about to arrive. More and more people entered the Purple Smoke Pavilion. Almost all of them were men. First young Master Zhua. Second young Master Zhua, welcome. Please come in. Suddenly, an enthusiastic shout resounded. Following that, 2 purple-clothed youths entered the restaurant. First young Master Zhua. Second young Master Zhua. You haven't been here for a few days. Immediately, almost all the free women in the restaurant rushed towards the 2 of them. Huh? Did you miss us? First young Master Zhua laughed loudly. Of course. I miss you every day and night. A group of women showed off their purple clothes and wished for nothing more than to pounce on them. The 2 of them didn't refuse either. They hugged each other and walked up the stairs. First young Master Zhua? Second young Master Zhua? Madman sized them up and frowned. They wouldn't be Little Xian's big brother and second brother, right? I'm not sure. I've never seen them before. Qin Feiyong shook his head and turned to look at a young man at the next table. He asked in a low voice, Brother, who are they? Why are they so popular? You don't even know them? The young man looked at Qin Feiyong in surprise. Qin Feiyong laughed awkwardly. Brother, don't laugh at me. This is my first time in Wind Sea City. No wonder. The young man shook his head and smiled, then said in a low voice, The 2 of them are not people we can provoke. What do you mean? Qin Feiyong was curious. They are the first young master and second young master of the Zhua family. And the patriarch of the Zhua family who will scare you to death is the famous vice city lord of our Wind Sea City, Zhua Tianxing. The young man said, So he is the son of the vice city lord. No wonder he is so popular. Qin Feiyong nodded in realization. Isn't that because of their family background? If not for Zhua Tianxing, what would they be? The young man smiled disdainfully. That's true. Qin Feiyong nodded and asked in a low voice, Then what are their characters like? Let's not talk about that. How many men who can come to the Purple Smoke Tower are good? The young man laughed. That's true. Qin Feiyong nodded with a smile, then retracted his gaze and looked at Madman. The mad scientist glanced at Qin Feiyong, then at the first young master and Zhua Tianxing. Killing intent flashed in his eyes. Noon. The Purple Smoke Tower was already full. Ding dong! Along with the sound of a zither, the entire Purple Smoke Tower quieted down, and everyone looked up. Qin Feiyong and the mad scientist also looked up suspiciously, but there was nothing. However, just as they were about to withdraw their gazes, multicolored flower petals suddenly fell from the sky. As the petals fell, everyone's eyes became more and more expectant. The people upstairs also walked out and stood in the hallway looking up. In a blur, a figure appeared in the air. It was an extremely graceful figure, like a fairy among flowers, surrounded by petals. Gradually, the figure became clearer. Finally, a woman appeared in front of everyone. The woman was about 20 years old. She was tall and slender, and she wore a thin 5-colored long dress. Her fine black hair danced in the wind. There were colorful butterflies embroidered on the dress. They seemed to be dancing as the dress fluttered. Her skin was like ice and her bones were like jade. Her chest was as tall as a mountain, looking extremely majestic. Her waist was slim and slender. She had an angelic face and a devilish figure. She was simply the dream lover in everyone's eyes. Petals kept falling, and the room was filled with the fragrance of flowers. Many people's eyes were glued to her. Some people even couldn't help but drool. Even Qin Feiyang and the mad scientist were stunned. The zither music was melodious. The woman danced among the petals like a flower fairy. Countless people were mesmerized by her. Suddenly, the dancing woman's red lips curved into a smile. She was so charming that the petals around her paled in comparison. At this moment, many people's hearts couldn't help but become restless. A primitive impulse surged into their hearts. Looking back with a charming smile, this sentence couldn't be more appropriate for this woman. What a troublemaker! The mad scientist mumbled. Even he couldn't help but be tempted. However, every time he was tempted, Zhuo Xiaoxian's figure would appear in his mind. He wasn't like other men who hadn't seen a woman for several lifetimes. Qin Feiyang was just stunned. To be honest, this woman's beauty wasn't inferior to the mermaid princess. It could be said that they were on par. However, he only had eyes for the mermaid princess. No matter how beautiful the other women were, they were just pink skeletons. Chapter 3059. Half an hour passed. The sound of the zither slowly fell to the ground, and the woman in colorful clothes slowly stopped dancing. She put down her arm and looked at the possessive gazes around her. There was a trace of undetectable disgust in her eyes. However, she seemed to be used to it and bowed. "Thank you for your support. It's better to meet than to hear. Miss Meow Meow is indeed a national beauty. May I have the honor of inviting Miss Meow Meow to a drink?" A graceful young man stood up and smiled at the woman in colorful clothes. "Thank you for your kindness, young master, but I don't drink. Please forgive me." The woman in colorful clothes looked at the young man apologetically. The young man's expression froze. He felt that he had lost face, but he did not dare to cause trouble here. He smiled embarrassedly and said, "It's fine, it's fine." Finished. He raised his head and drank the wine in the cup in one gulp, then returned to his seat. A few little bastards actually want to have ideas about Miss Meow Meow. They really overestimate themselves. Suddenly, an ear-piercing, mocking laughter rang out. The young man immediately flew into a rage out of humiliation and looked towards the person who spoke. However, when he saw the person who spoke, a flattering smile immediately appeared on his face. Because the person who spoke was young Master Zhuo. Among the younger generation of the Wind Sea City, young Master Zhuo could be said to be the number one person. However, it was not talent or cultivation, but family background. Because the city lord did not have any children, as the eldest son of the vice city lord, young Master Zhuo, he had absolute power and status. No matter how big the noble family was, they did not dare to offend him. Young Master Zhuo also held a wine cup in his hand. He swept his gaze across the crowd with disdain and laughed. "Miss Meow Meow, you won't not give me face, right?" The woman in colorful clothes pondered for a moment, then laughed. "How would I dare not give face to young Master Zhuo?" "Ha ha!" Young Master Zhuo immediately laughed complacently, walked in front of the woman in colorful clothes, and handed the wine cup to her. The woman in colorful clothes took the wine cup, placed it at the corner of her mouth, and took a sip, then returned the wine cup to young Master Zhuo. "You only drank so little." Young Master Zhuo frowned. The woman in colorful clothes apologetically, "I really can't handle the alcohol. I hope young master will forgive me." "Fine, fine." Young Master Zhuo smiled. At this moment, Second young master, Joie also walked over with a wine cup and laughed. Miss Meow Meow, my big brother's face. Then what about my face? As he spoke, he placed the wine cup in front of the multicolor-robed woman. The multicolor-robed woman smiled faintly and took a sip of her wine. Ha ha! Second young master, Joie couldn't help but laugh out loud. Then the two brothers looked at each other, and a sinister smile flashed across their eyes. Miss Meow Meow's dance is really mesmerizing. Why don't you come to our room and dance for us alone? Joie, first young master, smiled as he looked at the multicolor-clothed woman. Young masters, I'm really sorry. I have something to do today. Let's do it another day. The multicolor-clothed woman tactfully refused. What could be more important than us? Young master, Joie's gaze turned slightly cold. The multicolor-clothed woman said, I really have something to do. I hope the two of you can be magnanimous. Ha! I never thought that in this Wind Sea City there would actually be someone who dared to refuse the invitation of us brothers. The two of them laughed, but their eyes were cold. Please forgive me, young masters. The multicolor-clothed woman bowed before turning around and leaving. Did this young master allow you to leave? First young master, Joie stopped laughing as he looked at the back of the multicolored, clothed woman and said, I'm sorry, let's talk another day. The multicolor-clothed woman was already quite polite. However, the Joie brothers became more and more arrogant. The second young master of the Joie family took a step forward and grabbed the hand of the multicolor-clothed woman. His heart instantly skipped a beat. Such soft skin, second young master. Please respect yourself. The multicolor-clothed woman hurriedly pulled her hand out. Respect myself? Ha! She actually told this young master to respect himself. Don't you think that's funny? The second young master of the Joie family laughed out loud as if he had heard the funniest joke in the world. The other people in the restaurant also roared with laughter. Entering a place like the Purple Smoke House and telling others to respect themselves. Wasn't this a bitch setting up a monument? The multicolor-clothed woman ignored the two of them and turned around to leave. The second young master of the Joie family once again grabbed her arm and said in a deep voice, You have to understand that this is Wind Sea City. If you don't give us space, you will be cutting off your own path of retreat. I'm sorry. The multicolor-clothed woman apologized and forcefully pulled her arm back. However, the second young master of the Joie family held on tightly and refused to let go. His expression became more and more gloomy. Second young master, please let go. The multicolor-clothed woman smiled. You motherfucker, I gave you face, didn't I? The second young master of the Joie family was instantly enraged and slapped the multicolor-clothed woman's face. But at this moment, Madman took a step forward and stood in front of the multicolor-clothed woman. He looked at the second young master of the Joie family and said with a smile, Young Master Joie, this isn't good. The second young master of the Joie family was stunned and immediately raised his eyebrows. Who are you? How dare you interfere with my business? The others also looked at Madman in astonishment. He actually dared to interfere with the Joie brothers' business. He must have eaten a leopard's guts. The multicolor-clothed woman was also stunned. She hurriedly looked at Madman and said, Young master, this has nothing to do with you. Please don't. But before the multicolor-clothed woman could finish speaking, Madman waved his hand and looked at the Joie brothers. The eldest young master of the Joie family also had a gloomy expression. I heard that your sister, Joie Shaoxian, was taken away and was personally ordered by your father to be wanted. Don't you care about her? Do you only care about having fun here? Madman frowned. Care? This is her own shamelessness. She wants to run away with others. Even if she dies, she deserves it. The second young master of the Joie family sneered. You really can't wait for her to die. Madman shook his head. She's just a shameless woman. It's best if she dies, lest she implicates our entire Joie family. The second young master of the Joie family snorted. Shameless, Madman muttered and turned to look at the eldest young master of the Joie family. He asked, You think so too? Of course. Although she's our biological sister, everything she did is a disgrace to our Joie family. If she's in front of me now, I'll even end her myself. The eldest young master of the Joie family spoke with a ruthless coldness. Ha ha! Madman heard this and raised his head to laugh. Seeing this, the eldest young master of the Joie family's eyes flashed with killing intent as he slapped at Madman. He thought that Madman was unprepared and could succeed. But before he could get close, Madman suddenly raised his other arm and grabbed his wrist. The eldest young master of the Joie family was shocked. Do you know? If you care about Xiaoxian a little, even if it's just a little, I won't kill you. But from you, I can only feel killing intent. I really pity Xiaoxian now. How could she be born in such a family? How could she have a family like you? It's hard to imagine. How did she survive all these years? Madman's eyes were filled with killing intent. You called her Xiaoxian? Who are you? The two were shocked. Hee, I'm someone you can only look up to forever. Madman smiled proudly as his divine power roared out. The two's bodies immediately shattered in the void. Flesh and blood splattered everywhere, dyeing the surroundings red. Everyone in the restaurant was dumbfounded. He actually killed the Joie family's brothers? At the same time, Yun Ziang and the woman looked at each other before looking at Madman. Their eyes were shining. Boom! Madman took a step forward as his terrifying killing intent surged out. That killing intent turned into a torrent and rushed towards Yun Ziang. It's really you. Yun Ziang also stood up. His aura roared as it rushed towards Madman's killing intent. Along with a loud explosion, the entire purple smoke tower collapsed. The people in the restaurant all fled with ashen-faced faces. Outside, the people on the street were also shocked. What happened? Quickly inform the city lord mansion. Someone killed the Joie family's first and second young masters. Someone shouted, What? Someone actually dared to kill them? Did he eat a leopard's guts? Immediately, the place was in an uproar. Swoosh! At the same time, two figures soared into the sky. It was Madman and Yun Ziang. Qin Feiyang, the house master of Joyous Sky Tower, and the woman in colorful clothes also soared into the sky and stood not far away. Brother Mo, there's no need to be like this. Yun Ziang furrowed his brows. Clang! Madman didn't say anything. He waved his hand and a golden light surged. A golden halberd appeared in his hand. A heaven-defying divine art. Yun Ziang's pupils suddenly shrank. He immediately looked at the house master of Joyous Sky Tower and shouted, Let's go! Whoosh! The two immediately turned around and flew away. Qin Feiyang glanced at the house master of Joyous Sky Tower. He used the walk formula and instantly appeared in front of Yun Ziang. He said indifferently, Since we've met, let's end this. Brother Qin, it's really not what you think. We've never even met before. Why would I approach you? Yun Ziang said angrily. Clang! Qin Feiyang also remained silent. Along with a monstrous killing intent, a blood-colored sword appeared. Yun Ziang's expression changed. It was also a heaven-defying divine art. What two monsters! He didn't hesitate to take out the dagger. Qin Feiyang and Madman had seen this dagger in Joyous Sky Tower before. It was also a heaven-defying divine artifact. The house master of Joyous Sky Tower also guessed the identity of Qin Feiyang and Madman. He hurriedly landed in front of Yun Ziang and said, Qin Dage, Brother Mo, this is really a misunderstanding. This has nothing to do with you. Scram! Madman shouted. The house master of Joyous Sky Tower said anxiously, He really has no ill intentions. Why don't you believe him? All right. If he really has no problems, then let us read his memory. Qin Feiyang said. Read his memory? Yun Ziang frowned. That's right. I have a secret technique that can read memories. If you don't have any ulterior motives, then let me see your memory. If you really have no problems, I'll apologize to you, Qin Feiyang said. Do you think that's possible? Go and ask everyone. Who doesn't have any secrets? Yun Ziang raised his eyebrows. Then I'm sorry. Qin Feiyang took a step forward and slashed out with his sword. Madman also wielded his Fangtian halberd and attacked Yun Ziang from behind. Yun Ziang waved his hand. The power of law emerged, and a space crack appeared. Qin Feiyang's eyes flashed. The blood-colored sword turned in the air and directly blasted into the space crack. The space-time transmission channel collapsed immediately. Madman charged forward at this moment. Yun Ziang turned around and faced the halberd with the dagger. Clang! A wave of destructive energy instantly erupted from this place. Run! The city below suddenly began to collapse, and people fled in fear. Not good. This will affect many people. Qin Feiyang's face changed. Chapter 3060. Boom! But at the same time, a terrifying aura erupted from the city, Lord's mansion. It was Zhuo Tianxing's aura. Qin Feiyang said in a deep voice, Senior Brother Madman, we have reached our goal. Let's go. Madman glanced at Yun Ziang, then looked up at Zhuo Tianxing and sneered, Zhuo, this is just the beginning. If you don't withdraw the arrest warrant for Zhuo Shaoxian, I will make you die without descendants. At the same time, Qin Feiyang waved his hand and Qin Batian appeared. Qin Batian immediately opened a space-time teleportation channel and then rushed in with Qin Feiyang and Madman without looking back. What? There are actually people around them who can control the space-time laws. Yun Ziang was shocked. The multicolor-clothed woman looked at the space-time teleportation channel, and an imperceptible light flashed in her eyes. Swish! Just as Qin Feiyang and the other two left, Zhuo Tianxing arrived in the void. With a wave of his hand, the battle fluctuations that surged towards the city below immediately dissipated. What's going on? Immediately after, he looked at Yun Ziang. It's not my fault. I came to the Purple Smokehouse to drink, but I bumped into Qin Feiyang and Madman Amo. They attacked us without saying anything. There are many people here who can testify. Yun Ziang hurriedly explained. Qin Feiyang, Madman Amo. Zhuo Tianxing was shocked. Didn't he tell them to never come back? Why did they come back? And even cause such a big commotion? They are actually Qin Feiyang and Madman Amo. They are too bold. They are wanted. And they still dare to come to Wine Sea City? The people in the city below were also shocked. Where are Qin Feiyang and the others? At this time, the burly man, Elder Yu, and the city lord also arrived. The one who spoke was the burly man. There, Yun Ziang pointed at the space-time teleportation channel that had already closed. Bastard, this is a blatant provocation to us. The burly man said angrily. My lord, someone just reported that the first young master and second young master were killed. A guard hurriedly ran over and said, What? Zhuo Tianxing was shocked. The burly man, the city lord, and Elder Yu all stared blankly at the guard. They all heard the commotion and came over, so they didn't know about it yet. Zhuo Tianxing came back to his senses. Looking at the woman in colorful clothes, he shouted, Is this true? My lord, it's true. The multicolor-clothed woman replied, respectfully. Bastard, bastard. Zhuo Tianxing was furious. This time he wasn't acting. He was really angry. Why is this happening? Elder Yu and the mayor looked at each other, a trace of confusion in their eyes. Just now, I think I heard them say that if you don't remove the arrest warrant for Zhuo Shaoxian, they will make you die without descendants. I don't think they're joking. You have to be careful. The burly man looked at Zhuo Tianqing and sighed. Thank you for your concern, my lord. But there's no way I'll remove this arrest warrant. I'd like to see how they're going to make me die without descendants. Zhuo Tianqing smiled coldly. Sigh, I didn't expect that our good intentions to help him and Shaoxian end up like this. Elder Yu sighed. Yeah, this little lunatic is really a lunatic in name. Although he cares about Shaoxian, he can't be so extreme. The mayor was also a little annoyed. They thought that Qin Feiyang and the lunatic were doing this to fight for Zhuo Shaoxian. But that wasn't the case. Qin Feiyang and the lunatic's goal was to deepen this hatred. In this way, the Vice Alliance leader might let Zhuo Tianqing go. In other words, they were simply protecting Zhuo Tianqing. As for the first young master and second young master of the Zhuo family, it didn't matter to them. They didn't have good intentions toward Zhuo Shaoxian anyway. Next, the mayor interrogated Yun Ziang, the house master of the Tianyue Tower, and the multicolored-clothed woman, and didn't make things difficult for them, because everyone saw that Yun Ziang and the lunatic were both victims. As for the multicolored-clothed woman, although she had some conflicts with the first young master, they were the ones at fault. In front of so many people, even if Zhuo Tianqing wanted to take revenge, the mayor wouldn't allow it. As the mayor and the others left, the crowd became excited. They all admired Qin Feiyang and the lunatic's courage. Yun Ziang took a deep breath, looked at the multicolored-clothed woman, and said with a smile, Miss Miao Miao, what do you plan to do next? Looking at the ruins of the purple smoke tower, the multicolored-clothed woman sighed. I can only leave. Yes, you have to leave. After all, the two young masters of the Zhuo family had some conflicts with you before they died. With Zhuo Tianqing's ruthless personality, he'll come for you sooner or later. Yun Ziang transmitted his voice. Yeah, the multicolored-clothed woman nodded. Then why don't we do this? The Delight Pavilion's master gazed at the multicolored-clothed woman and smiled. Big sister, why don't you come with us to Ocean of Cloud City? Ocean of Cloud City? The multicolored-clothed woman was stunned. Yes, I won't hide it from you. I've opened a restaurant in Ocean of Cloud City as well, and it's called the Delight Pavilion. If you're willing, then we can run it together and allow the Delight Pavilion to spread throughout the entire eastern continent. The Delight Pavilion's master smiled. Yun Ziang was slightly stunned, and then he gazed at the woman and said, I never noticed that you're quite ambitious, but it's a good idea. One of you plays the zither like the sounds of nature, while the other dances like a celestial fairy. If you two work together, then it'll be a perfect combination. That's exactly what I'm thinking. The Delight Pavilion's master nodded, and then he gazed at the multicolored-clothed woman and smiled. Big sister, what do you think? The multicolored-clothed woman hesitated slightly. It's fate that brought us together. Yun Ziang grinned. The multicolored-clothed woman gazed at their sincerity and nodded. All right, then please take care of me in the future. Take care of each other. Take care of each other. Yun Ziang smiled, and then he opened a spatial passageway and left with them. He really has grasped the laws of space. The city governor's estate. The city governor stood in the air above the hall, and his eyes flickered brightly as he watched Yun Ziang's group leave. In any case, none of them are simple. Elder Yu shook his head. Yes. The city governor nodded, and then he glanced at Zhuo Tianqing, who had a gloomy expression on his face and couldn't help but shake his head. City governor, have you noticed that our eastern continent has become bustling since Qin Feiyang and Madman Mo appeared? Just like Yun Ziang. He's definitely a monstrous genius since he's grasped the laws of space, but we've never heard of him. Besides that, Meow Meow suddenly appeared in our city half a month ago. It wouldn't be a big deal if she was just an ordinary woman, but such an outstanding beauty should be sought after no matter where she goes. Why does she have to stay in a place like the Violet Mist Pavilion? To be honest, I don't see the bearing of a prostitute on her. Elder Yu frowned as he gazed at the city governor. I noticed that as well. And that person by Yunxiang's side is clearly a woman dressed as a man. The city governor said. A woman dressed as a man? Elder Yu was slightly stunned, and then he thought carefully for a moment before slapping his head. It's her, the pavilion master of Delight Pavilion. Really? The city governor was surprised. It can't be wrong. It's her. Even though she always wore a veil, I still remember the look in her eyes. But besides her appearance, she doesn't seem to have anything outstanding about her. Elder Yu frowned. Wrong. She doesn't seem to be that simple. The city governor shook his head. It can't be. Elder Yu was surprised. I hope it's just a misconception. As soon as he finished speaking, the city governor looked towards the hall below. A short while later, the burly man walked out. The city governor pulled Zhuo Tianxing, and the three of them flew down and landed in front of the burly man. The burly man glanced at the city governor and Elder Yu, then looked at Zhuo Tianxing with a smile. Let me tell you a piece of good news. Zhuo Tianxing raised his head and looked at the burly man suspiciously. I've just reported what happened earlier to Lord Vice Alliance leader. The deputy leader said that since they killed your two sons, it means that you really have nothing to do with this matter, and he won't pursue your mistakes in the future. The burly man said, Really? Zhuo Tianxing was stunned. Yes, the burly man nodded. Thank you, messenger, for speaking up for me in front of the deputy leader. Zhuo Tianxing was overjoyed, and a huge rock in his heart was finally lifted. Don't be happy too early. The deputy leader ordered us to kill these two people. The burly man said, We will. Zhuo Tianxing nodded. All right then, you guys continue to investigate. After the burly man finished speaking, he turned around and returned to the hall. When the door was closed, the city governor looked at Zhuo Tianxing and said with a smile, It seems that the death of your two sons is also rewarded. Yes, Zhuo Tianxing nodded. Wait, suddenly. Elder Yu waved his hand, pondered for a moment, and sent a sound transmission. Do you think that Qin Feiyang and Little Madman did this to help us? The two of them were stunned. That's impossible, because they don't know our situation at all. Zhuo Tianxing came back to his senses and shook his head. That's true. Elder Yu nodded. This confirms the saying, an unintentional willow will grow. The city governor laughed secretly. But they are my sons after all. If they are useless, their deaths are not to be regretted. Although they are a bit foppish, they are still good to their family. Zhuo Tianxing sighed. My condolences. The city governor patted him on the shoulder with a comforting expression. At the same time, in a corner of the eastern continent, in a hall, the deputy leader sat on a stone chair, his eyes flickering with a dark light to the extreme. Grandfather, what's so annoying? Suddenly, a young man in blood-red clothes walked in. His hair was also blood-red, and there was a shocking murderous aura all over his body. Sigh. The deputy leader shook his head and sighed, asking, Why are you back? I've already killed all the beasts there. What's the point of me staying there? The young man in blood-red clothes laughed and then asked, Grandfather, what happened? There is indeed a troublesome matter. The deputy leader nodded and briefly explained the situation of Qin Feiyang and Madman. That's it. The young man in blood-red clothes was stunned. Yes, the deputy leader nodded. Didn't you just kill a small city governor? Is there a need to deal with them like this? The young man in blood-red clothes shook his head speechlessly. The deputy leader said, You don't understand. These two must die. Why? The young man in blood-red clothes was curious. "Don't ask what you shouldn't ask." The deputy leader glared at him. The young man in blood-red clothes pursed his lips, his eyes flickered for a while, and said, "Grandfather, if you want him to die, then leave this matter to me." "You?" The deputy leader looked at the young man in shock. "Why? You don't have confidence in me?" The young man in blood-red clothes smiled. "That's not it." The deputy leader shook his head and said, "I'm just thinking, isn't it a bit of a waste to let you go? Anyway, I'm bored. Besides, after hearing what you said, I feel that this Qin Feiyang and Madman Amo are quite powerful. I really want to meet them." The young man in blood-red clothes smiled. Then the deputy leader pondered for a moment and nodded. "All right then. But remember, don't go too crazy and hurt innocent people. After all, our Rogue Cultivator Alliance still needs the support of those ants." "Got it. Then I'll be leaving." The young man in white waved his hand, opened a legendary altar, and quickly left. "Got it. I hope so." The deputy leader shook his head. He knew his grandson too well. Once he started playing, he wouldn't care about anything. Chapter 3061. Black Tortoise World. Qin Feiyang and Madman sat opposite each other. A pot of tea was boiling on the table in front of them, and the fragrance of tea filled the air. Both of them had already recovered their true appearances. Qin Batian had also returned and continued to comprehend the power of laws. Qin Feiyang held the teacup and sniffed it. He immediately felt refreshed and said with a smile, "I hope this will work." Madman nodded and glanced at Qin Feiyang. He frowned and said, "Why do you like drinking tea so much?" "Tea can nourish the body and the heart. Haven't you noticed that when drinking tea, time passes very slowly, the atmosphere is very relaxed, and the heart is also very calm?" Qin Feiyang smiled. "There's no need to be so particular." Madman shook his head. He was the kind of person who drank both wine and tea. If he didn't understand, he would understand a little. If he understood, he wouldn't understand too much. Taking a sip of the teacup, Madman pondered and said, "To cut the grass, we have to remove the roots." The root of this matter is actually the Vice Alliance leader. I really don't understand why this old thing wants to kill us. Madman raised his head and looked at Qin Feiyang with a frown. "I've also thought about this problem. If you say it's because of Wang Hui's death, I won't believe it even if you beat me to death. But other than that, we have no grudges with the Rogue Cultivator Alliance. We haven't even come into contact with this Vice Alliance leader, let alone any grudges. And this Vice Alliance leader seems to be especially concerned about us. Let's talk about our origins. Not many people know about our origins. Apart from the Demon Palace, only the Blood Palace knows. The Demon Palace and the Rogue Cultivator Alliance are enemies, so it's impossible for them to tell the Rogue Cultivator Alliance. Then, only Qin Feiyang analyzed step by step. When he reached this point, even he was shocked. Apart from the Demon Palace, only the Blood Palace was left. "You mean this person is related to the Blood Palace?" Madman was also shocked. "Most likely." Qin Feiyang took a deep breath and said solemnly, "But that's not right. The sea beasts of the sky, cloud, sea seem to know of our existence. Could it be that they told us?" Madman frowned. "No." Qin Feiyang shook his head decisively. "Why?" Madman had a suspicious expression. If it was really a sea beast from the heavenly cloud sea, then everyone in the eastern continent should know about it. But look, no matter if it's Eastern Mountain City, Tianfeng City, or this Wind Sea City, no one knows us. Even the demonic towers of the major cities are unfamiliar with us." Qin Feiyang said. "That makes sense." Madman nodded. "But then again, I really find it strange. We caused such a huge commotion in the heavenly cloud sea. How come no one knows about it?" I feel like someone is deliberately blocking the news. Qin Feiyang mumbled. Madman was slightly taken aback and quickly nodded. Now that you mention it, it really is a bit strange. Qin Feiyang asked, why don't we go to the Heavenly Cloud Sea and take a look? No, no, no. What if the Blood Halls people are still lurking in the sea of heavenly clouds? Wouldn't we be walking right into their trap? Madman shook his head. We're just asking around the edge of the sea, not going deep. Let's talk about it later. This is the Eastern continent. The Blood Hall wouldn't dare to act brazenly. Qin Feiyang said. If that's the case, Madman pondered for a while and nodded. All right, let's go take a look. The two drank the tea in their cups and stood up. You guys are going out again? At this time, Mermaid Princess and Zhuo Shaoxian walked out from the backyard with a few delicious dishes. You guys eat, don't worry about us. The two smiled slightly and left the Black Tortoise world. They activated the teleportation altar and rushed towards the Heavenly Cloud Sea. Not long after activating hundreds of teleportation altars, the two finally landed on the coast of the Heavenly Cloud Sea. Above the sea, the wind howled and the waves rolled. Qin Feiyang and Madman looked at each other and released their divine sense at the same time, rolling in all directions. The sea ahead and the mountain behind only had sea beasts and fierce beasts. The crisis could be resolved. Immediately, Madman rushed into the sea. Not long after, he came out with a half-step imperishable realm sea beast. What are you doing? The sea beast was panicking. You seem to know us? Qin Feiyang looked at it suspiciously. The sea beast said in horror, Go and ask who in the Heavenly Cloud Sea doesn't know you guys now. Are we that famous? Qin Feiyang was surprised. Damn. The sea beast immediately realized that something was wrong and actually let it slip in a moment of panic. Qin Feiyang and Madman looked at each other, their eyes shining. Looking at the sea beast's expression, they knew that something was wrong. Qin Feiyang smiled and said, Don't be nervous, we won't hurt you. We just want to know, why do you all know us? I can't say. The sea beast shook its head. Why? Qin Feiyang was curious. The sea beast only shook its head and didn't say anything. Madman raised his eyebrows, and a trace of killing intent emerged. The sea beast roared, Don't make things difficult for me, okay? I don't know anything. Qin Feiyang stopped Madman and looked at the sea beast with a smile. Then let's change the topic. Since the Heavenly Cloud Sea knows of our existence, why don't the creatures of the Eastern continent know? I don't know. The sea beast still shook its head. Madman said angrily, Are you unhappy if I don't beat you up? Even if you beat me up, I don't know. The sea beast shook its head. The corner of Madman's mouth twitched. Qin Feiyang looked at the sea beast, his eyes flickering. Suddenly, he looked up at the sea in front of him. His eyes filled with an inexplicable light. I'll ask you one last time. Are you going to tell me or not? If you don't, we will forcibly read your memories. Madman glared at the sea beast, but at this time, Qin Feiyang retracted his gaze and said with a smile, Senior brother, let it go. Madman looked at Qin Feiyang in shock. I think I already know what's going on. Qin Feiyang whispered. Madman was stunned for a moment and let go of the sea beast. The sea beast immediately jumped into the sea and disappeared. What's going on? Madman looked at Qin Feiyang suspiciously. Beast God. Qin Feiyang's eyes flashed. Beast God? Madman was stunned. Think about it carefully. Who has the ability to make all the sea beasts in the Heavenly Cloud Sea keep their mouths shut? Qin Feiyang asked. Madman narrowed his eyes and said, It must be the beast god of the Heavenly Cloud Sea. That's right. If I'm not wrong, the person who repeatedly stopped me from opening the space-time gate in the Heavenly Cloud Sea should also be him. Qin Feiyang said. This is very contradictory. It ordered the news to be sealed, This should be considered to be helping us. And stopping you from opening the space-time gate is harming us. What does it want to do? Madman raised his eyebrows. Maybe in its eyes, this is just a fun game. It wants to torment us and find some fun. Qin Feiyang shook his head. Find some fun? It's courting death. A row of black lines appeared on Madman's forehead. Qin Feiyang's expression changed as he hurriedly said, "Can you not talk nonsense? What if it hears us?" Hear us? Do you really think it's a god? Madman rolled his eyes, but before he finished, a divine light descended from the sky and smashed towards Madman. Damn! Madman turned around and ran. Boom! The divine light instantly descended like a bolt of lightning, blasting Madman's body. His hair instantly exploded and his body was charred black. This scene was too sudden, and Qin Feiyang was also caught off guard. But fortunately he wasn't affected. The divine light was like a flash in the pan, disappearing in an instant. Qin Feiyang looked at the sky, then turned around and walked to Madman with a gloating expression. He sniffed Madman's body and nodded. Charred on the outside and tender on the inside, quite fragrant. After saying that, he activated an altar. The corner of Madman's mouth twitched. He raised his head and looked at the sky with lingering fear, then quickly jumped onto the altar. Little Madman, what's wrong with you? When the two returned to the vicinity of Wind Sea City and entered the Black Tortoise Realm, Zhui Shaoxian immediately looked at Madman's appearance in surprise. I was careless with my words and offended the heavens, so I was struck by lightning. Qin Feiyang shook his head. Really? Zhui Shaoxian was surprised. Yes. Qin Feiyang nodded. Little Madman, why don't you behave yourself? Is the heavens something you can offend? Are you all right? Zhuo Shaoxian looked concerned. Are you a pig? You even believe his nonsense. Madman glanced at Zhuo Shaoxian speechlessly, then cursed out loud. That bastard, sooner or later. I'm going to strike him with a thunderbolt. Then you have to work hard. Qin Feiyang laughed. You are laughing at me. Madman glared at Qin Feiyang, then turned around and went home to wash up. The next day, in the sky above Wind Sea City, a young man in blood-red clothes appeared and looked at the city below, his eyes full of contempt. Then, he took a step forward, but he encountered the barrier set up by the city lord. Looking at the barrier, the young man in blood-red clothes was stunned. Who is it? How dare you barge into Wind Sea City? A few guards rushed into the sky and stared at the young man in blood-red clothes with murderous intent. Ask your city lord to come out and see me. The young man in blood-red clothes spoke, and his attitude immediately angered the guards. Who is this person? He seems to be very impressive. The people in the city below looked up at the young man in blood-red clothes, their eyes full of suspicion. Seeing that the guards were indifferent, the young man in blood-red clothes shouted with murderous intent in his eyes, "Xing-san, come out!" Whoosh! Not long after, the burly man appeared and stood above the city lord's mansion, looking at the young man in blood-red clothes. Immediately, his expression changed, and he hurriedly shouted at the guards, "Don't be rude!" Then he rushed toward the young man in blood-red clothes like lightning. Zhuo Tiancheng, the city lord and elder Yu also appeared, looking at the young man in blood-red clothes. A trace of suspicion flashed in their eyes, and they quickly flew over. Open the barrier, quickly. The burly man looked at the city lord and said. The city lord waved his hand, and the barrier opened. The young man in blood-red clothes entered the barrier, and without saying anything, he directly rushed in front of the guards. Sir, please spare our lives. The guards' expressions changed, and they hurriedly knelt in the void and begged. Even the messenger was so respectful. He must have a powerful background. Do you know who I am? How dare you show killing intent to me? The young man in blood-red clothes smiled proudly and slapped at them. "Please have mercy," the city lord hurriedly shouted. However, the young man in blood-red clothes turned a deaf ear to him, and a powerful aura burst out. It was the level 1 immortal realm. The guards were only at the half-step immortal realm, and they were directly smashed into pieces by the young man in blood-red clothes. Chapter 3062. The city lord looked at the young man in red with a gloomy expression. "They just talked back to you. Do you have to be so ruthless?" The young man in red turned around and looked at the city lord. The burly man's expression changed. He hurriedly looked at the city lord and scolded. "Don't be rude. Apologize to the young master." "Apologize?" The city lord frowned. "You've got guts." The young man in red walked toward the city lord step by step with an insufferably arrogant smile on his face. "Please calm down, young master." The burly man saw that the situation wasn't good. He hurriedly stood in front of the city lord and explained. "He's the city lord of Wind Sea City. Young master, please be merciful." The young man in red was stunned. He looked at the city lord and smiled. "So you're that trash city lord?" "You." The city lord was furious. "Zhuo Tianxing, an elder, you are also furious. He actually dared to insult the city lord in public?" The young man in red glanced at the city lord, then at Elder Yu and Zhuo Tianxing. He said lightly, "Third Xing, who are they?" "Young master, his name is Zhuo Tianxing. He's the vice city lord of Wind Sea City. This is Elder Yu. He's a guest of the city lord's mansion." Third Xing introduced them one by one. The young man in red looked at Zhuo Tianxing and Elder Yu and said contemptuously, "You're trash too." The two heard and clenched their fists. "You don't agree? It's been more than 50 years, and you can't even catch 2 half-step undying ants. If you're not trash, then what are you? In my opinion, calling you trash is a bit of a compliment." The young man in red didn't care about the three's face at all. He humiliated them without restraint. The city lord was so angry that he laughed and nodded. All right. If we're trash, then may I ask who you are?" "Young master, I'm afraid I'll scare you to death if I tell you." The young man in red said proudly. The city lord said, "Then tell us and see if you'll scare us to death. Can you stop talking?" Third Xing was extremely anxious. The young man in red said, "Third Xing, tell them." Third Xing sighed secretly. He stood beside the young man in red and looked at the city lord and the other three and said, "The one standing in front of you is the grandson of the vice city lord." What? The three's eyes. They had heard that the vice alliance leader had grandson. Furthermore, his talent was monstrous. However, because he had always been by the vice alliance master's side and had never appeared in front of others, he did not know what he looked like. Who would have thought that it would be the person in front of him? "How is it? Did I scare you?" The blood-red, clothed young man looked at the three of them proudly. "Sorry, we were blind. Please forgive us, young master." The three of them quickly lowered their heads and said. The blood-red, clothed young man said, "So, do you admit that you're trash now?" When the three of them heard this, their eyes immediately filled with anger. Even if he was the grandson of the Vice Alliance leader, he shouldn't humiliate them in public like this. "I'm asking you a question. Are you all trash?" The red-clothed young man shouted. Yes. The city lord gritted his teeth and endured the humiliation in his heart as he nodded. "That's more like it." The blood-red clothed young man smiled proudly and looked at Third Xing this time. "I came here for Qin Feiyang and Mad Manimo." Third Xing was shocked and hurriedly said, "Young master, these two are not good people." "I know. Not only did they kidnap some trash's daughter, but they also killed some trash's 2 sons. But so what? In front of me, they're just trash." The blood-red clothed young man smiled coldly. Zhuo Tianqing lowered his head, and his eyes were filled with anger. The person he was talking about was obviously him. He was the Vice Alliance leader of Wind Sea City. How could he establish his authority in Wind Sea City if he kept calling them trash? Was this how the grandson of the Vice Alliance leader was raised? Even so, he could only endure it, because the identity of the Vice Alliance leader's grandson was enough to suffocate him. Young master, let's go to the City Lord mansion first. Third Xing also felt the anger in the City Lord and the other two. He quickly looked at the blood-red-clothed young man and smiled obsequiously. The blood-red-clothed young man nodded and looked at the City Lord and the other two. I'll give you a mission. Young master, please give us your orders. The City Lord lowered his head and said, Send them a letter of challenge. Tell them that I'll be waiting for them in Wind Sea City. If they're still men, come to Wind Sea City and fight with me. The blood-red-clothed young man's eyes flashed. The City Lord was stunned. Not only are you trash, but you're also an idiot. Of course, they're Qin Feiyang and Madman Mo, the blood-red-clothed young man mocked, and walked towards the City Lord mansion without looking back. Hurry up and make the arrangements. Third Xing instructed and quickly chased after the blood-red-clothed young man. Damn, the grandson of the Vice Alliance leader is indeed arrogant. Yeah. He just came and already sent a letter of challenge to Qin Feiyang and Madman Mo. That attitude of not putting them in his eyes at all. The people below were discussing. High up in the sky, the City Lord and the other two were gloomy. What the hell? Isn't he just relying on the Vice Alliance leader's support? He has no manners at all. He's even worse than those playboys in Wind Sea City. Elder, you cursed angrily. Calm down. The City Lord sighed secretly. My lord, how can I calm down like this? Old Zhuo, and I can forget about it, but you're the City Lord of Wind Sea City, and a supreme existence at the perfect Dominator realm. In the Rogue Cultivator Alliance, you're a senior figure. He's just a junior. What right does he have to be so domineering in front of you? Even if Qin Feiyang saw you, he would know to respectfully call you senior. Elder Yu was indignant. Enough, enough. Who asked him to be the grandson of the Vice Alliance leader? And since he was young, the Vice Alliance leader has kept him by his side and carefully protected him. It can be seen how much the Vice Alliance leader cares about him. We can't afford to offend such a person. The City Lord shook his head and sighed. It's one thing to not offend him, but at least he should know some manners. Elder Yu is right. With his manners, he's even worse than those playboys in Wind Sea City. Zhuo Tianqing snorted coldly. You're still angry? As the City Lord, I can tolerate it. Can't you? All right, hurry up and arrange it. I want to see what ability the person that the Vice Alliance leader has kept by his side and personally nurtured personally has. The City Lord thought to himself. Ability? Zhuo Tianqing snorted disdainfully and sent a sound transmission. I think he only has the ability to be arrogant and despotic. Now, I hope that Qin Feiyang and Little Madman can appear and kill him directly. The City Lord was shocked and immediately glared at Zhuo Tianqing. He thought to himself, Don't say such things again in the future. Zhuo Tianqing pursed his lips and said, All right, we'll arrange it. Elder Yu, let's go. Elder Yu nodded. The two of them swooped down and disappeared like lightning. The City Lord retracted his gaze and looked at the City Lord mansion with a cold light in his eyes. Under the arrangement of Zhuo Tianqing and Elder Yu, the blood-red clothed youth's challenge quickly spread throughout Wind Sea City. In just a few days, all the cities in the eastern continent were discussing this matter. What? The grandson of the Rogue Cultivator Alliance's Vice Alliance leader actually personally issued a challenge. Who are Qin Feiyang and Madman Mo? Why haven't I heard of them before? Although Qin Feiyang and Madman Mo had caused a lot of trouble during this period of time, and they were wanted in all the major cities of the eastern continent, Everyone was just curious at most. But now, when the blood-red, clothed youth issued a challenge, the two of them instantly became famous. Because it was different. How could the grandson of the Vice Alliance leader personally issue a challenge? How could they be ordinary people? So everyone started to pay special attention to Qin Feiyong and Madman Mo. What? The grandson of the Vice Alliance leader personally came to Wine Sea City and issued a challenge to Qin Feiyong and Madman Mo? Cloud Sea City, Heavenly Delight Pavilion, Yun Xiang, the woman in a colorful dress, and the Tower Master of Heavenly Delight Pavilion looked at the staff before them with shock. Yes, now, it's not just Heavenly Delight Pavilion. The entire Eastern continent is talking about it. The staff nodded. Yun Xiang pondered for a moment and waved to the staff. You go do your thing. Yes. The staff turned and left. Yun Xiang waved his hand and closed the door. He looked at the woman in a colorful dress and smiled bitterly. These two really know how to cause trouble. The woman in a colorful dress and the Tower Master of Heavenly Delight Pavilion shook their heads helplessly. They actually alarmed the grandson of the Vice Alliance leader. The Tower Master of Heavenly Delight Pavilion asked, Brother Yin, do you know the grandson of the Vice Alliance leader? No, but I've heard of him. It's said that he's a very monstrous person. The Vice Alliance leader has been keeping him by his side to nurture him, but he also seems to be an extremely ruthless person. Yun Xiang said. The Tower Master of Heavenly Delight Pavilion said worriedly, this time, Qin Dage and Madman Mo might be at a disadvantage. I don't know if they will be at a disadvantage, but I'm sure that if they accept the challenge, the battle will be very exciting. Why don't we go to Wine Sea City and take a look now? Yun Xiang suggested. Now, Qin Dage and Madman Mo haven't accepted the challenge yet, right? The Tower Master of Heavenly Delight Pavilion was stunned. You don't understand this, do you? The challenge of the Vice Alliance leader's grandson is a rare occurrence. Once this news is out, I believe that many people will be like us and go to Wind Sea City to take a look. If we're late, I'm afraid we won't even be able to enter the city. Yun Xiang said with a smile. That makes sense. The Tower Master of Heavenly Delight Pavilion nodded and looked at the woman in a colorful dress. Meow meow, shall we go now? As long as you guys are happy. Meow meow smiled. At the same time, Demon Palace. It can't be. That old thing is actually willing to let his precious grandson go to Wine Sea City? The Demon Palace Hall Master looked at Chu Yun, who was sitting below in shock. This matter has already spread throughout the entire Eastern continent. Even many of our Demon Palace's disciples are already on their way to Wine Sea City. This matter can't be fake. These two little fellows really didn't disappoint us. They're getting out of hand. The corners of Chu Yun's mouth curled up slightly with a hint of playfulness. It's not that they're getting out of hand. It's the Vice Alliance leader who's unwilling to let go. I think there's not only a problem, but a huge problem. How's your investigation going? The Demon Palace Hall Master asked. The spies we arranged in the Rogue Cultivator Alliance can't get close to that old thing, so it's very difficult to investigate. Chu Yin shook her head. What about the Alliance leader of the Rogue Cultivator Alliance? The Demon Palace Hall Master asked. Chu Yin said, this person seems to be hiding somewhere in seclusion. He doesn't seem to know about this matter yet. However, you don't have to worry. We can't investigate, but someone can. Who? The Demon Palace Hall Master was suspicious. I heard from Elder Hua that Qin Feiyong and Chu Yin seem to have become interested in the Vice Alliance leader. Think about it. As the parties involved, they will definitely do whatever it takes to investigate this matter. Chu Yun smiled. Do you mean that we just have to wait and enjoy the fruits of their labor? The Demon Palace Hall Master said. Of course, it's best if we don't put in any effort. Chu Yun giggled. You little girl, The Demon Palace Hall master shook his head and smiled. After pondering for a moment, he said, "All right then. Since Elder Hua is watching, we don't have to worry." Chapter 3063. The Eastern Continent was in turmoil, but Qin Feiyang and the madman were unaware of it, because in the Sky Cloud realm, other than Zhuo Tiansheng, they had not established a contract bridge with anyone, so naturally no one informed them. As for Zhuo Tiansheng, now that he hated them to the bone, he definitely would not take the initiative to send them a message. Unsurprisingly, the blood-red, clothed youth had to wait for a long time, because Qin Feiyang and the madman were now in seclusion, refining soul stones while comprehending the law, profundity. Although they were multitasking, it was not a big problem for the two of them, and Qin Feiyang had only comprehended the first profundity of his 3-law profundity, although the madman had comprehended the second profundity of the law of slaughter. There was no progress in the other two. The law profundity was not only a powerful method, but also a necessary condition to step into the sovereign realm. And now their cultivation had already stepped into the initial, imperishable realm, and seeing that they were getting closer and closer to the peak, they naturally could not neglect the law, profundity. Day after day, year after year passed. On this day, in the sky above the herb field, suddenly, a space-time storm appeared, emitting a terrifying destructive wave, instantly engulfing a large area of the void. This was the third profundity of the law of space, space-time storm. But soon, the space-time storm disappeared. That's right, this was Qin Beishan's breakthrough, because in the Black Tortoise realm, only he had mastered the law of space. Some more years passed. Boom! A mysterious power surged out from one of the pavilions and into the sky. The sky above the Devil's Land immediately turned into nothingness. Little Wimp immediately appeared, staring at the area of nothingness with a trace of shock in his eyes. Soon, the phenomenon of nothingness also disappeared, and everything quickly returned to normal. Little Wimp's gaze fell on the pavilion. This pavilion was where Lu Zhenyang lived. The law of nothingness, not bad. With a murmur, Little Wimp disappeared. Almost every few years, some phenomena would appear in the Devil's Land. These phenomena were all formed by the law of profundity, because it was not Qin Feiyang, the madman, Qin Batian, and Lu Zhenyang who were working hard. The others were working hard as well. For example, Mu Tianyang and the Fiend Ancestor. Then there was Xia Yuan and the other 50 divine generals. Some of them cultivated in the Devil's Land, while others went out to comprehend the power of laws. More or less, they all gained something. Another few years passed. A dazzling divine light suddenly rushed out from a courtyard. It was not very powerful, but it contained a shocking wave of life energy that was as boundless as an ocean, instantly covering the entire Devil's Land. This is the law of life. Little Wimp appeared once again, his eyes filled with shock. Tap, along with the sound of light footsteps, a woman walked out of the pavilion. Her skin was sparkling and translucent, and she was tall and slender. She wore a light golden dress, and her wavy golden hair danced in the wind. The life energy that permeated the Devil's Land came from her. At this moment, she was like a goddess of life, charming and graceful. That was right. She was the mermaid princess. It doesn't seem that difficult. The mermaid princess glanced at the surrounding life energy, and with a thought, all the life energy immediately returned to her body. Not that difficult. Little Wimp's mouth twitched slightly when he heard this, but he didn't say anything and directly disappeared without a trace. Boom! Another few years passed. A terrifying and ferocious aura suddenly erupted from within the ancient castle. Following closely, a dark energy surged into the sky, baring its fangs and brandishing its claws, like a peerless beast. At this moment, All the people in the devil's land who had comprehended the law profundity felt great fear. It was as if the law profundity was being pulled out of their bodies by a mysterious force. What's going on? Qin Feiyang and the madman were the first to wake up, because they were inside the ancient castle. The two ran out of the cultivation room and looked at a tightly closed stone door. What is this white-eyed wolf doing? The madman frowned. What's the situation? Qin Batian, Lu Zhangyang, Mermaid Princess, Fire Lotus, and the others ran in one after another, their faces full of surprise. Qin Feiyang looked at them and asked, "Do you also have the illusion that the law profundity is being plundered?" The Mermaid Princess nodded. Qin Feiyang was speechless. "What are you nodding for? You didn't comprehend the law profundity." The Mermaid Princess was slightly taken aback and said with a smile, "Who said I didn't comprehend the law profundity?" "What?" Qin Feiyang looked at her in a daze. "A few years ago, I comprehended the law of life." The Mermaid Princess smiled proudly. "Law of life?" Qin Feiyang and the madman looked at each other. Boom! At this time, the dark energy that rushed out of the cultivation room was even more terrifying. At this moment, Qin Feiyang and the others felt an extremely clear sense of crisis. What kind of terrifying killing move did this white-eyed wolf comprehend? Everyone was bewildered. The law profundity felt threatened. Could it be that it had comprehended a peerless killing technique that could deprive the law profundity? As soon as this thought appeared, everyone's hearts couldn't help but tremble. Needless to say, there was really such a possibility, because the white-eyed wolf's innate ability, the first was to deprive the battle soul, and the second was to deprive the cultivation, and they were both permanent. It was also very possible to deprive the law profundity. A moment later, the black energy gradually poured into the cultivation room, and the threat in the hearts of Qin Feiyang and the others finally disappeared. "Haha, what are you all looking at outside for? Don't you have anything else to do?" The white-eyed wolf's voice came from inside, but that complacent laughter was undisguised. "Come out." Qin Feiyang said, "I'm not free." The white-eyed wolf responded and then went silent. No matter how Qin Feiyang called out, it ignored him, pretending to be mysterious all day long. Frenzy curled his lips. Qin Feiyang could directly barge in. After all, he was the owner of the ancient castle, and it was only a matter of thought for him to go anywhere. But thinking about it, there was no need, because even if he went in and found the white-eyed wolf, if the white-eyed wolf didn't say anything, there was nothing he could do. Let's disperse, let's disperse." Qin Feiyang waved his hand, but then seemed to think of something and said, "Wait." He quickly looked at the Mermaid Princess and asked, "You just said that you comprehended the law of life?" "Yes." The Mermaid Princess nodded. Qin Feiyang said, "Is it the law of life in the 6-word divine formula?" "I'm not sure about that. Besides, the life and death of the 6-word divine formula might not necessarily imply the law of life and death." The Mermaid Princess shook her head. Qin Feiyang was slightly stunned. It seemed to make sense because until now he still hadn't figured out what this life and death represented. However, this little girl comprehending the law of life was really surprising. Qin Feiyang asked, "How did you comprehend it?" "Just thinking about it, I suddenly had an epiphany." The Mermaid Princess said it very casually, but Qin Feiyang and the others were speechless. Just thinking about it and suddenly had an epiphany? This was really infuriating. "All right, continue." Qin Feiyang and Frenzy looked at each other and returned to their respective cultivation rooms powerlessly. The Mermaid Princess and the others also left one after another. Qin Rushuang glanced at the Mermaid Princess and said with a pout, "You really make people envious." "There's no need. Isn't it just a law of life?" The Mermaid Princess chuckled. "Isn't it just a law of life?" Qin Rushuang rubbed her forehead and looked at the sky. This damn girl's words were so infuriating. The law of life and death could be said to be the strongest law in the world, because they represented life and death. Who in the world could escape from life and death? Therefore, the law of life and death was the law of life that countless creatures dreamed of. But this damn girl, not only did she comprehend it, but she also said it in a casual tone. How could she, who didn't even comprehend the most ordinary law of life, endure this? It was a blow to her. No, she couldn't stay behind closed doors anymore. She had to go out for a walk. Qin Rushuang muttered and turned to leave without looking back. Sister Rushuang, where are you going? The mermaid princess hurriedly asked. I'm going to go out and find a man to come back. Otherwise, I'll really become an old leftover woman. Qin Rushuang said without looking back. The mermaid princess was stunned and then couldn't help but shake her head and laugh. It seemed that Sister Rushuang was quite concerned about being called an old, leftover woman. Chapter 3064. On the third morning after the white-eyed wolf's incident, Zhuo Shaoxian received a message. Father. Zhuo Shaoxian was startled as she took out the communicative stone, before she immediately received the message. It was indeed Zhuo Tiancheng. Father. Zhuo Shaoxian was extremely excited. It had been tens of thousands of years since she last saw her father in the Xianwu world. She missed him a lot. Zhuo Tiancheng looked at his daughter guiltily and asked, How have you been these years? I've been fine. How about you? Zhuo Shaoxian nodded. Same old. Zhuo Tiancheng wore a faint smile, but his expression was rather haggard. Zhuo Shaoxian asked suspiciously, Father, did you encounter any trouble? Just some trivial matters. Zhuo Tiancheng waved his hand and asked, Daughter, you won't blame me, will you? Blame you? Zhuo Shaoxian was slightly startled before she blurted out, I can't thank you enough for helping me and little lunatic. Why would I blame you? Zhuo Tiancheng was startled. He glanced at Zhuo Shaoxian suspiciously. Did this girl not know about the severing of the father-daughter relationship? Shaoxian, let's go for a walk. At this moment, the mermaid princess' voice could be heard from outside. She then entered the room with a gentle smile. However, when she saw Zhuo Tiancheng, the mermaid princess' eyes widened. She immediately went up to him and said with a smile, Master Zhuo. You are. Zhuo Tiancheng glanced at the mermaid princess suspiciously. Father, she's the sister-in-law I told you about. She's very nice to me. Zhuo Shaoxian quickly explained. Zhuo Tiancheng came to a realization, I see. Thank you for taking care of Shaoxian. Shaoxian is like my own sister to me. It's my duty to take care of her. The mermaid princess let out a smile. She turned around and took the communicative stone from Zhuo Shaoxian's hand. She then looked at Zhuo Shaoxian and said, Shaoxian, can you leave us alone for a moment? I have some personal matters to discuss with your father. Can't I listen? Zhuo Shaoxian was startled. Be good. The mermaid princess smiled faintly. All right. Zhuo Shaoxian nodded helplessly, then turned and walked out of the room. The mermaid princess waved her hand and the door slowly closed. She looked at Zhuo Tiancheng and said, We haven't told Shaoxian that you've severed ties with your daughter. I really don't know. Zhuo Tiancheng mumbled. We're doing this for her own good. After all, you're very important to her. If he knew about this, he would definitely run to you, regardless of the consequences. Now that she's wanted everywhere, she'll definitely die if she runs out. The mermaid princess said, Thank you for always thinking of Xian, Zhuo Tiancheng said gratefully, and then said in a deep voice, But I don't understand. Why did you kill my 2 sons? Has the Vice Alliance leader of the Rogue Cultivator Alliance let you go? The mermaid princess replied with a question. Yes. Shuo Tianqing nodded. Then he froze and hurriedly asked, Are you really helping me? That's right. After all, you're Xiao Xian's father. And you're also helping Xiao Xian and senior brother Frenzy. So of course, we won't let you bear this pressure alone. The mermaid princess nodded. Then we can think of other ways. After all, they're my children, Xiao Xian's biological brothers. Zhuo Tianqing frowned. You might not know us well. Anyone who is targeted by us is basically a person who deserves to die. Speaking of which, you're still very incompetent as a father. You didn't even notice the matter between your children. The mermaid princess shook her head. You said they all deserve to die? Zhuo Tianqing couldn't accept it. Instead of questioning me, you might as well pay attention to your sons. The mermaid princess didn't explain. Some things had to be discovered by the person involved. Zhuo Tianqing frowned. She actually said that he was incompetent? What did she say about paying attention to his sons? Could it be, suddenly, his gaze trembled as he looked at the mermaid princess in disbelief. He asked Xiao Xian and them, as the deputy city lord of a super-large city like Wind Sea City, how could he be an idiot? So he thought of something, but it was hard to accept for a moment. The mermaid princess waved her hand and said, Don't ask me. You can slowly observe for yourself. All right. Zhuo Tianqing nodded and then said, Where are Qin Batian and little Frenzy? They're all in seclusion, the mermaid princess said truthfully. Hearing this, Zhuo Tianqing wanted to say something but hesitated. The mermaid princess smiled and said, If there's anything you want to say, just say it. There's indeed one thing. Zhuo Tianqing explained the situation of the blood-red, clothed youth in detail. The deputy leader's grandson? The mermaid princess was taken aback. Yes, Zhuo Tianqing nodded. The mermaid princess pondered for a moment and nodded. All right, I'll go tell Feiyang and senior brother Frenzy right away. Don't talk nonsense. Although this person is arrogant, he's still the deputy leader's grandson. We can't afford to offend him. I'm not telling you to kill him, but to tell you to be careful in the future. Zhuo Tianqing said. Thank you. The mermaid princess smiled slightly and called Zhuo Xiaoxianin. She then entered the castle and found Frenzy and Qin Feiyang. Hearing this, Qin Feiyang and Zhuo Xiaoxian were also quite surprised. Even the deputy leader's grandson had come. They really thought highly of them. Zhuo Tianqing said not to provoke him. The mermaid princess said, The key is that he's the one provoking us now. Besides, he even issued a challenge. If we still hide, how can we survive in the sky cloud realm in the future? Frenzy laughed. The mermaid princess was helpless. She knew it would end like this. Qin Feiyang glanced at Frenzy, then looked at the mermaid princess and asked, What's this person's character like? Not good. I heard from Zhuo Tianqing that this person is extremely arrogant. When he first appeared in Wind Sea City, he arrogantly and unreasonably killed a few guards. He even insulted Zhuo Tianqing and the other two in front of everyone. And these years he has been mingling in various brothels, seeking pleasure all day long. The mermaid princess said, No way. Even Zhuo Tianqing and the others are like this. Frenzy was stunned. Yes, so you can imagine how arrogant this person is. The mermaid princess nodded. What about his cultivation? Qin Feiyang asked. It seems to be a beginner-level immortal realm. The mermaid princess said. What the hell? A beginner-level immortal realm is so arrogant. Frenzy frowned. Cough, cough. Senior brother, you are also a beginner-level immortal realm, but you don't seem to be more low-key than him. Qin Feiyang coughed dryly and kindly reminded him. How can we be the same? He is arrogant because of his grandfather behind him, but I am relying on myself. There is a big difference. Frenzy curled his lips. Qin Feiyong couldn't help but laugh. Don't be long-winded, let's go and take a look, Frenzy urged. You guys really want to go? The mermaid princess looked at the two. Of course. A cold light flashed in Frenzy's eyes. Yes, we have to go. Qin Feiyong nodded. But the mermaid princess was a little worried. Why does the vice leader want to kill us? This is the question we have been trying to figure out. But we don't even know where the vice leader is, so there is no way to investigate. And now his grandson has taken the initiative to come to our door, so why should we be polite? Moreover, I like to deal with this kind of playboy the most. Frenzy sneered. All right, the mermaid princess nodded, looked at the two, and said, Then you guys be careful. Qin Feiyong's eyes flashed slightly, looked at Frenzy, and said with a smile, Actually, this matter isn't urgent. Why? Frenzy was suspicious. As the grandson of the vice leader, he has already issued the challenge. Without seeing us, his pride won't allow him to leave. We might as well continue to cultivate for a period of time. I feel that I have already comprehended the second profound of the three laws. Give me some more time, and I should be able to comprehend it, Qin Feiyong said. I agree. After all, he is the grandson of the vice leader. We can't underestimate him. The more tricks you guys have, the more chances you have of winning. The mermaid princess nodded. Frenzy lowered his head and thought for a moment before gritting his teeth. All right, let him wait. Coincidentally, I have also comprehended the third profound of the slaughter law. Qin Feiyong nodded, then sized up Frenzy and said, Speaking of which, what kind of law did you inherit in the temple? It's none of your business. Frenzy turned around and entered the cultivation room, leaving Qin Feiyong and the mermaid princess looking at each other. The white-eyed wolf is like this, and so is he. Can't we have fun together? Qin Feiyong collected his thoughts and shook his head helplessly. What's the rush? We'll find out sooner or later. The mermaid princess smiled. Meanwhile, Zhuo Tiansheng and Zhuo Shaoxian chatted for a while before returning to the city lord's mansion. Not only was Xing Sen a terrifying expert in the city lord's mansion, the young man in a blood-red outfit was also there. Therefore, he would definitely not be at the city lord's mansion. After returning to the city lord's mansion, he sat alone in the main hall with his head lowered. His eyes were glittering, as if he was thinking about something. A while later, Old Man Yu came in and closed the door. He transmitted his voice. Did you see Shaoxian? Yes. Zhuo Tianqing nodded. Is she doing well? Old Man Yu asked with a smile. Not bad. Qin Feiyong and the others are treating her well too. Besides, I know that Qin Batian and Little Crazy did cause a ruckus at the Purple Smoke Pagoda to help me. Zhuo Tianqing transmitted his voice. Old Man Yu was slightly startled before he mumbled, That's a good thing. Why do you look so troubled? Zhuo Tiansheng pondered for a while before he raised his head and looked at Old Man Yu. Old Man Yu, even though you're a consecrator of the city lord's mansion, both the city lord and I treat you like family. I can feel that. Old Man Yu nodded and said in a suspicious tone, But why are you suddenly mentioning this? Zhuo Tianqing said, Then let me ask you, if the relationship between my children isn't as simple as it seems, what should I do? Well, I don't quite understand. Old Man Yu shook his head. To be honest, when I was talking to Qin Feiyong, I vaguely revealed some bad news. Shaoxian has been having a hard time in the city, Lord's Mansion. And it's all because of her brothers. Zhuo Tianqing sighed. You mean they're jealous of how much you dote on Shaoxian? Old Man Yu was surprised. Yes. So I want you to investigate this matter for me. You must get to the bottom of it. Zhuo Tianqing looked at Old Man Yu pleadingly. He wanted to investigate it himself, but he was afraid of seeing the truth and feeling upset. Old Man Yu looked deeply at Zhuo Tianqing and nodded. Okay, I'll do it right away. With that, he turned around and left quickly. I hope it's not what I think, after Tiancheng watched Old Manuel leave. He looked up at the top of the hall and muttered to himself, "That you're tuning in to the Thunder Spear YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories."